I am Jessica. I live in Upper Wisconsin, Upper Michigan area, and I have had 17 different parents. And it's a really long journey. So, my biological mom, I know her name. Her name is Julia Damiano. She gave me up for adoption at birth. Growing up, I had no idea why or who she was. Really didn't want to know who she was, just that's what happened. I was adopted by a family in Texas. Their names were Colette and Mitchell, I want to say, Mitch. And I think I lived with them till I was like 3 or 4.
Okay.
They adopted me right at birth. They adopted me because they couldn't get pregnant. They had an older son, Jason, and he was much older. I think he was like in his teens. Mm-hmm. And they had tried for several years to get pregnant. And they adopted me. And literally, while they were finalizing the adoption, they got pregnant. Wow. So I had a sister, Nicole, and she was, I want to say, only a couple months younger than me. We were very close in age.
So, quick question.
Sure.
Your biological mom, did she know this family, or like how did she find them? Do you know?
I don't really know. I was told she knew them, that she was friends with them, but honestly, I'm not sure.
Okay, but it wasn't like through some sort of...
I don't know if it was through an agency or what. Okay. I was never told really anything about her, but like I said, I never really searched, so yeah, I have no idea. But so yeah, I lived with Colette and Mitchell till I was 3. I don't really, honestly, I don't remember anything about living with them. I take it back. I remember going to Hawaii. I think the grandma lived in Hawaii. And I say remember, but I'm wondering if it's because I looked at old pictures. You know how sometimes pictures can be like, they invoke like, oh yeah, I was there, or I did that.
Trigger like some sort of like faint memory of it too.
Yes, because I remember like a closet door. Mm-hmm. Like something really like small little detail, and like something weird. But other than that, during the time that I lived with them, I had broken my collarbone. I fell out of my crib. I was very accident prone, always hurting myself. And I think he was a truck driver. From pictures, I think he was a semi-truck driver. But what I do remember is I remember I felt safe around the dad, mm-hmm. And comfortable, just relaxed. And then I don't really remember too much about Colette. But when I was 3 or 4, they decided that they didn't want me anymore. I have no idea why. Could you imagine like having a baby and then being like, yeah, it's not working for me?
Yeah, and it does make you wonder too, like if they didn't happen to get pregnant, if they
and then they got a bonus. They got 2.
Right.
Yeah, and 2 girls at the same time, and we looked. I mean, you wouldn't have known that I wasn't like already part of the family. Like, so I have no idea. To this day, I've never been given an answer. I have reached out. I think I reached out about 10 years ago, and I asked Colette. I'm like, hey, can you explain like what happened? Like, who knows? Never found out.
Did she answer at all?
No. I even called one time because when Facebook became a thing, I had reached out. Nicole and I were talking just briefly. She was in college and we were just kind of catching up. But never found out from anybody how that happened. But I was adopted then by her sister, Lydia. So Colette's sister, Lydia, and her husband, Bill, adopted me when I was 3 or 4. And I lived with them till I was 8. It was good. They had 2 boys that lived in the house at the time. I think she had a child from another marriage, and he might have had a child from another marriage. But anyways, I grew up with Nick and Jonathan, and they were only like 1 and 2 years older than me. We were all really close in age.
Now, since that was her sister, Colette's sister, would you ever see them like at any
No, never saw them again because Lydia lived in Arizona and Colette lived in Texas. And I don't want to say that, I don't think they had like a bad relationship, but I think it was just, they had that type of relationship. When you see each other, it's awesome and you get along great, but other than that, you live just totally separate lives.
Yeah.
And that's just my presumption from what I've seen. I don't know if that's the case. They
Right.
could talk all the time, and I would have no idea. But so yeah, they had 2 boys, Nick and John, and I do have more memories from that. I remember moving into a house in Arizona, and it had horses. I loved that, and like I think we must have rented the house because the horses weren't ours. But I loved that. But I realized pretty quickly the feeling of being unwanted. I don't remember the memory of like Colette giving me to Lydia. I was way too young for that, but I'm sure it was traumatic. I'm sure it was horrible.
Yeah.
But I do remember like getting to the point, because a lot of times living with Bill and Lydia, you knew that Nick and John were their kids and I was the extra. Not that I was inconvenient, I wouldn't say. It was just little things. Like I think like the worst thing I remember is just being locked in my room a lot. They put locks on my door, and just being in there all day, all the time, like to the point where I would count the tiles on the floor and I'd go back and forth, and then I would look out the window and I counted all the red cars to 1,000, and then I would count all the white cars to 1,000 and the blue cars that would go by, because we were on a pretty busy intersection, just to pass the time, doing cartwheels in my room, like whatever. And it was pretty empty. I don't remember having like a ton of toys to play with.
And your brothers were not being locked in their room.
No,
it was just you.
No, they had like, I remember they had like the old Nintendo, and like they were always out with their friends, especially Jonathan. He really liked riding bikes. But it's weird because I remember really bad moments, but I remember like also having fun. Like I remember like one Christmas, Lydia went all out, and shoot, I got Little Mermaid everything. I got a Little Mermaid sleeping bag, and I got the Beauty and the Beast mirror, and like, so it's weird. It's confusing because on one part, like, I didn't feel wanted, but on the other, it's like, well, they must have wanted me, because I remember even one time I came home from school and there was this really cool windbreaker on my bed, like, the old school ugly colors,
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, this is awesome. And they tried to convince me that somebody else had dropped it off and they didn't know where it came from. Oh, and there was a bike. So it's like, there was stuff like that. But then I remember the first time Bill abused me, and I did not know what it was. I didn't know what was happening. And so like, it's so interesting, like looking back on it as an adult, and then realizing, oh, maybe some of those good memories were to pay off the bad memories.
Yeah.
And that's just me, again, assuming. But it was just interesting. Like, it was a weird dynamic. Everything was put in votes, meaning like, I remember it being Halloween. I think I could have only been like 5 or 6. And something happened. Somebody had done something, and they put us all on a couch. They put us all in a row, and they would always do this, and they'd be like, okay, who did it? I literally would always be like, I did it, because I already knew. Like, they're going to blame me. They're going to take a vote. They're both going to say that I did it, even whether I did it, whatever they're accusing me of or not. So I'm just going to take it. But they put a vote for Halloween, and all the boys, Bill and the 2 boys, they were like, no, she shouldn't go trick-or-treating this year. We don't think that's a good idea. And then, like, I was done. I didn't get to go trick-or-treating. And Lydia, like, came to me later, and she was like, I was going to vote yes, but, like, it was pointless because I'm like, thinking back, I was 6. Like, Are you kidding me? Like, that's so messed up.
And how long were you living with them before the abuse started with Bill?
I don't remember. I want to say it was probably a little bit into it, like a year, maybe 2 years. I think it only happened 2 times. He brought me into his room, and Lydia, she was a nurse. She she worked nights a lot. I remember her not being around super often. She worked a lot of extra shifts because I think Bill had some like medical issues, and he was home a lot. But I remember him molesting me, and I remember it hurting and being confused about the situation, what was going on. And he had put money in my jewelry box for me. Like, and it was only like $3 or something, but I remember being like, sweet, like this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I only remember a couple things, whether it happened more and I blocked it out or
Right.
you never, I just, I don't know. It's something I really didn't think about or even really remember till I was a little bit older in my teenage years. And I was like, wait a minute. Now that I'm kind of understanding some sex education and stuff like that, I know that that was inappropriate and that shouldn't have happened. But I do remember telling Lydia, like, hey, I'm bleeding a little bit. Like, it hurts down there. And I remember her being like, what? And her looking, I remember the shock when she was like, what do you mean you're bleeding? And who knows? It could have been like she thought I was starting my period really early. Who knows? But I just remember the shock on her, like immediate, like, let's go look. Let's check. Let's find out what's going on. And that could have been the nurse in her. But yeah. So with Nick and John, like I got along with them enough to get by, but like there was no like closeness there. Around my 8th birthday, I think I had just celebrated my 8th birthday. I don't know if they had told me before or after that they were going to be sending me to a children's home. And I had never heard of that. It was basically, I mean, it was just that. It was a group home for kids. It's called Sunshine Acres Children's Home in Mesa, Arizona. And to this day, they're still open. And they have like, each house has, at least when I lived there, there's a bunch of different houses and each house has 10 kids in it. So anyways, Bill and Lydia said, hey, we've got some things changing in our lives and, you know, we need to send you away. I don't remember exactly what they told me at that age. I don't have any remembrance of that. So I went there right after I turned 8. By 8, I was just like, that was my normal,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I just,
like on to the next, another big change.
yeah, it didn't feel crazy. So one thing that happened when I was living with Bill and Lydia was I went with a family friend on a camping trip, and I got bit by a German Shepherd. So that's why I have this scar on my face. And that was like my first like scary thing. I mean, you would think the sexual abuse was, but it wasn't because I didn't know any different. But the dog, that was really scary because I love animals and
Yeah.
I just remember, and it was totally my fault. The parents probably should have said, hey, don't pet the dog while he's eating. I should have known, but I didn't. And I went up to be like, you're such a good boy. And then I thought he jumped up and licked me. And I went and wiped my face away. My hand was just covered in blood. My whole side of my face was ripped off. I had lost a tooth that bit through my lip, and it was messy. And we were in the middle of nowhere. We were in an RV, and it was in the middle of the desert. And they had a helicopter that came and got me, and then I had to be life flighted out. And I just remember being in the hospital and like the stitches. I got so many stitches, and then how ugly I felt after. I don't know if I always had an ugly haircut. I'm pretty sure I did. It was back when bowl cuts were like a thing for girls. Who does that? Wrong. That's
right.
You know, it should be illegal. Anyway, so I had an ugly bowl cut, and then like my whole face, my scar used to be much bigger. I've had a couple plastic surgeries so to fix the facial reconstruction, but it used to be really bad. And going back to school, everybody called me Scarface, and it was very hard to make friends, and I was the ugly duckling. And also didn't know, that was the other thing with Bill and Lydia. I often came back from school very behind, like educationally. I remember getting notes from the teacher and having to have Lydia sign stuff for me to be able to return, just so that the teacher knew that I had told my parents, like, hey. But I was illiterate, and I didn't know at the time like how impactful that would be. So I struggled a lot with that. So I just feel like when I lived there, I didn't get anything out of it. Just felt very isolated, alone, and ganged up on all the time. Because if it wasn't at home, it was at school. I had no
Yeah.
friends at school. I was bullied a lot. I was definitely the ugly duckling. But my scar healed up, and it was a little better after that. I remember I made a friend because we had matching light up shoes, and that was awesome. And she also had very ugly hair. So we were good. But okay, so 8. I moved to the children's home, Sunshine Acres. And my first day there, I think as an adult looking back, I think it's crazy. Like, I just was there. Like, okay, whatever. I'm here now. Like, this is my life. You know, that's the other thing I've been struggling with too, is as I'm telling this, like I literally feel like I'm telling you a story of somebody else.
Yeah.
That person is not me. This little girl, I feel really horrible for her. I mean, but it's not me. It's I feel so out of person when I talk about that girl, because it's so foreign to me. But anyways, I remember my first day. They took me to a room. I remember sitting on the bed, and I remember the house parent. I don't remember her name. I want to say it's Mary, but I could be wrong. I remember her sitting me down and being like, she was so sweet. She was older. I would say she was probably in her 50s. She was so sweet. She was like, is there anything I can do for you? You know, anything at all. And she was like, how are you feeling? Do you want me to read you a bedtime story? Like, she was willing to do anything. And I was like, I'm fine. Why are you even asking me? Like, why would anything be wrong with me? And now looking back at her reaction, her like shock, like, I get it now. Because like, that's very, I should have been like, well, here we go again, you know? But honestly, that children's home was one of the best memories of my childhood. I lived with 10 girls. A lot of girls my age, and it was really fun. Like, I had friends for the first time in my life, and I had girls my age, and it was a compound type style. So they had a playground you could go to. You had a cafeteria that you went to. We had our own chapel, and it was the first time I heard about Christ. And it was just really cool. It was a really fun experience. The house parents were all really nice.
That's really good.
Yeah, and the relief house parents, all the different families that came through that took care of us, everybody just really loved us. At least that was my experience.
Yeah.
It was a little different for me because I believe that the house, even to this day, like the home is more for maybe troubled kids that need a place to go. But when I lived there, we had a lot of kids come in where it was just the families. Instead of kids going to foster care, they would put them in this home as a temporary thing. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of girls that came in with pretty crazy stories. Like, I remember, like, there was a girl there for literally only a week. Her parents had killed each other at a McDonald's parking lot, and she saw the whole thing, and she was my age. And I just remember, that's one thing that I'm like, whoa, like, there's your life, you've got it going on. I'm fine. Like, I have friends now, so I'm good. So a lot of the girls, like I said, a lot of the girls were there just because of family issues, or like maybe divorce, who knows. Some girls were there because they made some poor choices in life. But for the most part, the girls were good. I was also really young. I was 8. So I didn't know what the teenagers, the 14, 15, 16-year-olds, why they had come. We were each paired with one older kid in our room. So you don't think of like a big dorm room. It wasn't like that. We each had our own room with one older partner. And it was fun. I came at summertime and we just played. Oh, we even had our own pool. So that was really fun. It was literally the best thing ever. And yeah, I loved it there. I loved
Yeah, it sounds
all the
like it was
friends.
like a really good sense of community.
Yes, yeah. And then there was other houses. So we were the only girls' house, but I think there was like 3 or 4 other houses, but they were boys.
Okay.
And it was super cool because when we would get together for like chapel, we would sing songs and play games. It was like a big youth group
Yeah.
almost because you had so many kids and there was just different activities. There was a big gym and they would have like carnival nights and just fun stuff. Like it was basically camp year round.
Yeah.
So it was really fun. So that's Mary, and I can't remember, but I do remember the husband. I don't remember his name, but I remember like just to cheer me up. It was in that first week. I must have been kind of down, but he had pulled me aside. He's like, I got a big secret for you. And I'm like, oh boy, what is it? You know? And he pulled out a whatchamacallit candy bar. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. He's like, don't tell anybody. And he gave it to me. And it's just so silly how like little things like that, like totally changed my perspective. Like, I'm going to be fine. This place is great. I'm going to make it, you know?
Now, when you were there, was there any type of like open communication of like next steps or like how long you would be there?
Not to me.
Okay.
So I believe when I was taken there, Bill and Lydia told me that they were coming back to get me. I guess I'm glad that you mentioned that because I totally forgot about that. They did tell me that they would come back and get me. So I think I still had that in the back of my head. Like, this is just temporary. But I also didn't want to leave at that point. Like, I loved where I was
It was a better
at.
experience.
Yes. It was so much healthier for me. And like the other thing, they homeschooled. So that was a little bit better. I was able to work on my spelling and stuff. I remember like, I think they had given me a test or they had put me through a public school exam just to see where I was at. And I remember one of the first spelling words was C. Like, I can see you outside. And I literally wrote down the letter C because I had no clue. I'm like, I have no idea. And so it was nice that they were able to recognize that. I remember learning my vowels at 8, like just the basic A, E, I, O, U, and the different sounds they make. So it was crazy to think now as a mom, because I also homeschool, and I'm like, oh shoot, my kid was like 5 and he was already reading like full books. So it's sad because, you know, nobody cared enough. Like I just somehow got swept.
Yeah.
I got passed by just enough that I was able to get by, but like literally know nothing. So anyways, at almost 9, we got our relief house parent. So a relief house parent is somebody that comes in like maybe once a month on the weekend or for a few days to give the official house parents relief. And they get to go and like take care of whatever they want or go on vacation or just get a break. Because this is their full-time job. These house parents, when they move in, they had at that place, they had their own apartment, which was connected to the house. It was basically their own room, but they had like a little kitchenette and living room if they wanted. They could also close it off during the time that they had their time off. So my relief house parents were Kent and Emily, and they were very young when they ended up working at the children's home. I want to say they were like 23, 24, like young, because they hadn't had kids yet. I don't think she had been out of college super long. I could be wrong, but I want to say early 20s, Kent and Emily. And oh my gosh, I immediately loved them. They were so fun. When I think of Emily, she was the one that like the crafter of all crafters. She could turn anything into something miraculous. Like she made Christmas cookies and she like would cut them out like individual colors, like checkerboard, gingham, whatever.
Yeah.
Like how? I don't know, but she would do it with 10 girls. She got us all on a schedule. Like I remember waking up and then she'd have cute little chore lists and like everything was so organized and neat and unchaotic. that was really the first time in my life where I felt like a kid. You know, she was so fun. She would play with us, which the other house parents, I don't really remember. I might have just been too young, but Emily was the best. Like, she would do gymnastics with us and she'd teach us all sorts of things. And then coloring, even just she would make coloring fun. And she would be like, well, you know what you could do to make it even better? You could add this texture to it. And like,
Yeah.
she was just so
Super creative.
Yeah. And she was the best. She was so awesome. And Kent was amazing too. I don't really have too many memories as a child about Kent, but I liked him. He was just a good dad, you know, just fun to be around. He would get involved, but he let Emily take the reins with us girls because some of us were wild. But Kent was the one. He was the music guy. Like, I just remember we drove this big 15-passenger van everywhere, and they were the first house parents that like they took us out of the compound to like we went to California, but I don't remember. Oh, we went to Disneyland. And I thought that was really cool. That was my first time. I don't have too many memories. I remember the haunted house, but I just remember like how organized it was for the trip. And Kent, it was the first time he had introduced me or like all the girls to like music. Up until that point, I don't really remember anybody but Michael Jackson. And he introduced me to DC Talk and the Newsboys, which are both Christian rock bands, I guess. Oh, even to this day, like I can get down to that.
Yeah.
So it was just really fun memories of both of them. They really invested time. You could tell they really genuinely cared about us. And I know there were some issues that they had with some of the older girls being inappropriate. We also had horses. I forgot about that. We had a barn and horses, but some of the other girls sneaking out to see the other boys because there were, you know, I didn't experience that because I hadn't gone through puberty and I couldn't care less about boys at that time. But I know they struggled with that. But I think, they were just, I just really loved them. But then right before I turned 9, the children's home came to me. Gary Engel, I think he ran it, and Chuck and his grandma. His grandma had founded the children's home, and they came to me and they sat me down and they were like, "Hey, we have a family that's interested in adopting you." And they told me about them. And then it's pretty much the same process that you do in adoptions today. I would go on little home visits with them. And I remember they came and spent like a lunch with me. And then like they took me to the mall one time. And
did they have any other kids?
Yes. So their names were Bob and Janet Reed. And they are from Scottsdale, Arizona. I believe they're still there. They had a daughter, Kaylee. They had adopted her, I believe, from China when she was a baby. So they had her, and she was the same age as me. I think they wanted a sibling for her. So they had her, but we did like the whole home visits and stuff. And I remember the time where it came like, okay, we got to move you out. I was devastated. I was like, I don't want to. Like, I really love my house parents and I love all the girls. And the crazy thing is, all those girls, there was 5 or 6 of us. We were all the same age. So we were just best friends. But anyways, I remember thinking, this is a very rich family. They had a huge house and they had their own in-ground pool. I didn't realize everybody in Arizona has an in-ground pool, but you know, I thought moving up, you know? So I moved in with them, and I think what I'll share is more of a perspective of viewing it now than as a child, just because I can look back and realize, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah.
So I moved in, and they put me in school right away. I remember riding the bus. They worked a lot. So I don't know if they owned a small municipal airport or if they just ran it or managed it. I still can't remember. I want to say they owned it. But They worked a lot. So I would come home and then I'd crawl under the garage. They'd leave it open just a crack. And she'd come home and like, I must have been going through growth spurt. I always wanted pork chops and she would always make me a pork chop for a snack or dinner, whatever it was. And then I'd take a long bubble bath and listen to Wilson Phillips for hours. Like so much so, I remember she would boil water on the stove just because I had already used up all the hot water. So it was just so fun. Like I remember just really independent. I don't really remember Kayla. I don't really remember her too much. She hung out with her friends a lot. But one thing that Bob and Janet did on the weekends, and I don't know if this is because they were working or what, but they would drop us off at the skate rink, at the roller rink. And it was like $5. They would give me $5 every weekend. And surprisingly, that lasted me a long time. Mm-hmm. And hours. Now that I think about it, I'm like, you did what? Like, yeah. That's crazy. And it wasn't like a couple, it was like all afternoon.
Yeah.
But they were fun. They were very, if I needed something, they would just do it or get it. They threw me a big 9th birthday party at a place called Rawhide. It's like a cowboy themed. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. It's like a cowboy themed like amusement park.
Okay.
And that was really cool. And they invited all of the children's home girls and it was fun. I remember, and Emily was there and that was awesome because I got to see her again. Yeah. And I loved her so much. So it was cool. But yeah, they were fun. They would let me have the girls over all the time in the summertime. I remember them from the children's home. They would be over and we would be swimming all the time. But yeah, honestly, I don't remember anything about Bob. I did the whole take your daughter to work day. And I do remember that because he let somebody fly me in their like little Cessna or whatever it was. And he was like, you want to do a trick? And he did like a flip or something. And I was like, I just remember dying. I died.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible. It was very like scary.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And, but yeah, that's all I know of Bob. Like,
right.
I just don't remember him. He was funny. I did meet him and Janet again with my husband and son, I think about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. We were in Mesa and I had texted Kayla, or maybe I texted Janet, somebody. I said, hey, I'm in town. I know this is kind of random, but it would just be fun to catch up. And they did. We met at a restaurant and it was really fun to catch up with them. I should go back though, because by the time school started again, I think at the end of the summer, I was going back to the children's home.
And why was that?
Well, I am not 100% sure. I think it was, I guess I have a good idea. So I did constantly say, man, I sure wish I was back at the children's home. Like, I miss my friends. I want to go back. I miss Kent and Emily. I know I said that quite often. In the end, they are still adults and they're the parents and they're the ones making the decision. I believe from my own experience, which I'll get into, my own experience with taking in foster kids or orphaned kids, I believe that it wasn't a good fit. Like, I genuinely believe there was not necessarily anything wrong with me, but it just didn't feel right or it didn't fit with their lifestyle. Who knows? Like, I don't think there was anything wrong with me. Looking at it now, I really don't think there was anything wrong with me. And I don't think they thought there was anything wrong with me. I think it just didn't work out. I know I mention quite often that I miss Kent and Emily and that I miss the girls in general. Like, I missed having friends. Like, yeah. Kayla was great, but she really was like off with her friends a lot. Like, I really don't remember her being around.
Right.
Just like Bob, I don't remember him being around. Janet even wasn't around a lot. I mean, we did do a family vacation to like a beach or something. Like I said, I genuinely believe there was nothing wrong.
Right.
It just wasn't, it didn't feel right to them, or it wasn't a good fit. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that right now. Then I was great with it because I was like, sweet, going back with Kent and Emily and going back to my girls.
Yeah.
Like it literally, I could care less at the time. So, but they were great.
And it is like, it is a weird thing to kind of look back on because like you said, it's one of those things where if a child keeps saying they want to go back somewhere, it's like you kind of think, well, maybe that would be better for them.
Yes,
but then at the
100%.
same time, it's like you don't really realize how important stability is, or like would be to just keep someone in one place for like
just hold out a little bit longer and maybe it'll go away.
And it's
eventually.
hard because you see both sides of it, and it's like
I've experienced both sides of it,
right?
So I'll eventually get into that. But that if I hadn't experienced it myself and totally understood, like even with going into what I'm going to tell you about Ken and Emily, like I get it,
right?
Finally,
yeah.
So, but no, they were great. We did meet up and they were really fun. They would tell me, they're like, yeah, Bob was like, yeah, you had this thing where everything was opposite day. And when he told me, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot that. Like I would always just try to be silly and be like, yeah everything's opposite. I would wear my clothes backwards. I was just weird. I was a weird kid. But I do think I was just trying to get attention.
Yeah.
So, but no, they were great. I have nothing negative to say about them. They were.
And that's good that you were able to like meet up with them after the fact.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think it's funny. Like when I met up with them, like it was brought up why I left. And I was so uncomfortable. I just went back to the whole, oh, yeah, I didn't even want to be there. I know I told you a million times I wanted to go. And so you did. So thank you for sending me back. But in reality, like, especially going through it myself, it's like, no, you had the choice. But it was, it's just one of those things. Like, I didn't want to make it awkward.
Yeah.
I'm not going to blame them.
Right.
Whatever, and I'm glad they didn't keep me because one big life-changing thing was when I started my relationship with Jesus. Like I would not have had that with them. I don't think they were church. No, we never went to church or anything like that. And just even, something as simple as my husband, I would have never met him. So,
right. And everything happens the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, it does. So they were number 4, number 5, number 5, number 4. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyways.
So then you went.
So I went back.
Okay.
And I got back to Kent and Emily.
And just to kind of confirm, so Ken and Emily, they're like, you said they are considered house parents.
Yes.
So each group of those 10 girls was assigned a different house parent? Is that how it works?
So there was only one house of girls. It was just my house.
Okay.
And then like the other homes were full of 10 boys. And each of those homes also had a set of house parents.
Got it. Okay.
And there was a couple sets of relief house parents that had their own house separate where they would come into the house to take care of us.
But for all the kids there, this was just like a temporary place. Like no one stayed
Not
there
all
long.
of them.
Okay.
I mean, yes, I get, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got
it was temporary.
Okay.
Yeah. All of them had parents.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I should back up with Bill and Lydia. I do remember they did have to like cut all ties. They took me there one last time to their house, but they all came with me. Chuck came with me, like the director of the children's home. And I remember it was like kind of like okay, Jessica, you're never going to see them again. Like I didn't realize it was a big deal. Now I know it was them like signing their rights away and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that was so that the children's home could put me up for adoption because they knew that Bill and Lydia were never going to get me back.
Yeah.
And so they were like, well, if you don't want her, somebody else would love her. So, so that's that. But okay. So I get back to the children's home. I had just turned 9 and, life was great. Like, I started 3rd grade. Well, I started 3rd grade for my second time because like I said, they did homeschooling for that first year, 3rd grade that I was in, but they held me back obviously because I was illiterate. I don't even think I could write. I definitely couldn't read. They put me in a special reading program. I eventually did learn to read, but I think, I was 9 by the time I learned that. Even to this day, I struggle really hard with spelling and stuff like that. It's funny because now that I homeschool, I'm like, the program that I used for my son, it's like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Like I'm learning so much more as an adult than I ever did as a child with just basic like skills on this this is the sound that you need to make this word.
So you're in third grade,
I'm in
right?
third grade.
Okay.
Yep. And I still have all my friends. The same girls are still there. We might have gotten one new girl, and like one of the older girls might have left. I wasn't super close with the older girls, so I don't really remember their timeline when they were there or when they weren't. My roommate was different. Leslie was my roommate, and I think she ended up leaving. I think she either left because she went back to her family or she grew out of the system. Remember, she might have been the oldest person in the house. Yeah, it was just the same stuff, like activities and, everything was just fun with Kent and Emily. There was never really like bad moments, movie nights, and they were just great. I only had one bad experience. Like I must have done something bad because I remember Kent got so angry that he left me outside the front door. And while it was like a compound, I was safe. There was nothing. I was scared because there was rattlesnakes and scorpions and like, ooh. But I remember he got so mad, he ended up picking me up and like pushing me against the wall and like yelling. I still don't remember what it was. I probably did something stupid. I probably like, it's frowned upon to do that, but I probably deserved it. Like whatever it was. But that's the only like bad memory that I have of them. Like nothing else. Emily, no, she was perfect the whole time. She was amazing. So right before I turned 10, Kent and Emily decided that they didn't want to be at the children's home anymore. I was devastated, obviously. Like they were the best. And I remember them coming to me after having let us all know. And they pulled me aside and they were like, hey, we want to take you with us. It was the best day of my life. Like,
no, take your time.
Okay. So they asked me to move with them. They were moving to Michigan. And I think it was because I remember even during at Sunshine Acres, Kent had been trying to like become a police officer, I believe. He was on the side. He was doing something else. But I believe it was, he wanted to be a police officer. And so, the other thing was Emily had gotten pregnant and they wanted to start their own family and they weren't sure, like, maybe this isn't the right environment, which, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, you're probably right. Like, I don't know if I could have done that. So, but they pulled me aside and they asked to adopt me. And I was shocked because it was everything I had ever dreamed of. And I didn't even care about leaving my friends. Like, that's how much I wanted it. Like, doesn't matter. I'll go to the ends of the earth for you. No problem. I'm there. And it was great. She was, like I said, not only was she crafty, she was the most thoughtful. Like on the trip, this was before iPads and phones. They had rented the biggest U-Haul and there was the 3-seater. I think maybe she had already had the baby, Megan. I want to say that she did. I think maybe grandma, somebody came and got the baby, but it was just the three of us in the car or in the truck. And when I got in the truck, she had this big basket. And in the basket they were like all wrapped in white paper. And they had different random times, like 11:53 or whatever. So as the trip went on, I got to open a present. And it was like something fun. Like we could play a game together or color a picture together. And that was like still like that's one of the most special gifts I've ever gotten because I know how much thought went into that. On top of her doing all the packing, all the stuff, like getting transitioned over for the new house parents to take over the girls, she thought of doing that. And I thought that was so cool. Plus, it's just such a good idea. Like, and then I remember on the trip, I was going to turn 10 on the trip. So we were stopping at Kent's parents in Iowa. And we were pulled over at a rest stop and Emily was in the bathroom and Kent, I remember just being up high on the seat and like he opened the passenger door and he looked up at me and was like, I just want you to know that you're never going to have to go anywhere ever again. We're going to keep you forever. We will love you forever. And I know that's hard for you to understand, but we're going to keep you forever. And I remember being like, just feeling like, oh, thank you.
Like finally.
This is it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no like red flags. There's no like, it's never going to change. I have the best life. Like, I didn't care where we were going. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew I had them. And that's really all that mattered, because they were the best thing in my life. And I was just really happy. So anyways, we got to Iowa and they had a little birthday party for me for my 10th birthday. And it was fun. Ken's mom, I remember I think she did like a daycare, and she had like all sorts of crafts ready for me to do. She had like these tissue paper cutouts where you take glue and you dip your pencil in and you make a picture with it. It was so fun. So we stopped there for a couple days, maybe a week, I don't know. And then we moved to Davison, Michigan. And we didn't get to Davison first. Actually, I don't remember where we lived first. I would describe it as the ghetto. Being older, like we lived on Knickerbocker Street in like a suburb of, I don't know where it was actually, but I just remember being like, oh,
this is sketchy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It just felt dirty. Mm-hmm. Like I remember the house, she was great. I mean, she was able to whip up, she could turn anything into magic, and she did. I don't really remember that house too much. I think they just had it for a little bit as temporary till they could find a house to buy. But I do remember that summer, they were great. They were still fun. They got me a pool, and all the neighborhood kids came over, and like I was the cool house because I had this, pool, the type that you unfold, and you fill up with the hose. And it's weird now that I think about it, because Emily wasn't around a lot. I'm not sure if she had a job or what. And I don't know what Kent was doing. I want to say maybe he was in school or something. I remember seeing him more than her after we moved. But I remember it being, I think they only had one car, because I remember we had to walk to the grocery store, gas station to get milk, and like carrying it back. I just remember like little tidbits of like, but it was still good. Like they were still super awesome. Like I practiced my reading with Kent a lot at night. I remember like getting in bed with them to like read to both of them. They just cared. They cared that I was learning. And then we moved to Davison, Michigan, and they had bought a fixer-upper, and it was really cool because she worked her magic again, and you'd never know because she painted plaid on the wall, okay? Like, how do you do that? She could do it. But that's when things started to change, 4th grade. Kent and Emily just weren't present in my life. They were there, but they weren't emotionally there. And it's so crazy how, like, even as a kid, like, I could pick up on it. And I couldn't figure out, like, is it me? Is it them? Is something else happening? Like, and then overcompensating, like, trying to make it better. Like, maybe if I do this, they'll love me more. Or maybe if I remember Kent pulling me aside and just being like, why can't you just be like normal kids who use their imagination and play by themselves? I remember that very distinctly. It was after church, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And I remember like a couple days later, I was playing by myself. I remember using my imagination, and Kent being like, see, this is exactly what I mean, Jessica, you're doing a great job. And I remember feeling like, I did it, like he loves me. But yeah, it slowly turned sour, and I could never figure out why.
Do you remember how their relationship was with their daughter? Like,
Megan?
Was their focus on her?
They were, she was an infant. She was literally, I don't even think she was 2 by the time I ended up leaving that family. But yeah, she was a baby. baby. And I think I got along good with the baby. It didn't bother me that there was a
Right.
baby. Like, sometimes I know you deal with jealousy. I mean, I'm sure that there was times where I'm like, man, I wish you paid little more attention to me. But I don't remember being like, oh, I hate this baby or how annoying. I didn't feel like that. I liked her. She was fine. She was just a baby. But it just felt like I said, they started pulling away and I don't know what was going on their end. And so I started overcompensating, like trying to get more attention. And I think that even drove them even more crazy because whatever they were dealing with or whatever they were going through, like I made it worse by not, I don't know. Even as I'm saying it, I'm like, do you hear yourself? You sound crazy. Like that's on them, not you. Anyways, so I made it through a school year, barely, 4th grade. It was horrible. Struggled again with spelling. That was my biggest thing. I remember getting in a lot of trouble from my teacher, Mrs. Lesbrance, about spelling, and she caught me cheating off of a girl named Noelle. I did it. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted my parents to be proud of me. Like, I felt stupid. So I got in trouble with that. But then summer came. And when summer came, I noticed pretty quickly that I wasn't at home a lot. They would send me with people like at church, particularly a family, the Hemingway family. They always say this. I always say they had 1 million kids. They probably only had 3. Mm-hmm. Anybody that has 3 or more kids, you have 1 million kids. That's
felt just like a lot, yeah.
So the Hemingways, I spent a lot of time with them. And I did not realize it until recently, like how much time I was spending there, like days and days and days, maybe even weeks. It was so much time. And now looking back how everything ended, I wonder if Kent and Emily were potentially prepping me to move in with this family. Again, that's just thinking. Yeah, like that's possibly what happened. But it came to an end right after Christmas, right before I turned 11, I think. They came to me and they, were like, hey, like I remember him squatting down and I was like right at the stairs and him just being like, we do love you, but we're going to have to send you away. And I remember like, that was the first time like that it was just devastating. Like, what? Like
right.
you
especially when he told you the opposite. You
told me. Yeah. I just remember like, even in my head, like not only physically, but telling him like, you said that you would love me forever. Why would you do that? Like you went out of your way to make me feel special. And what did I do? Mm-hmm. Like even still to this day, like I get angry when I think about it. Like I didn't do anything. I was a normal kid. I was not bad. I sucked at school. Yes, that is true. To no fault of my own. Let's be real. To no fault of my own. I was terrible at school.
But I think too, when you make a commitment like that, I mean, in my opinion, that's a huge decision, adopting a child, and you kind of have to know or prepare yourself for the bad just as much as you do the good.
Well, and that's the crazy
thing. You're dealing
with
a human.
Yeah.
Like anything can happen, anything can change.
And I know from like my own experience, which again, I'll get into, like, I get it. But the difference is they had me years before. They knew me. There was no surprises. Oh, this child might have problems that we don't know how to deal with or we can't deal with. No, they knew exactly what they were getting into. I was the same girl that they had known since I was 8.
Yeah.
And here I am turning 11. Like, I haven't changed. You have. And so they told me, yeah, like, we can't keep you. They didn't really give me, I'm sure they did give me a reason, but by then I just remember it was like I could feel myself just shut down. Like, I just remember not caring. I don't care what you have to say. I don't care. I don't want to hear your lies.
Is that like you're leaving again? So.
And it was very scary because I didn't know where I was going. And I don't think at that time they really did either. They had a couple ideas, but I don't think they knew 100% where I was going. And so that was scary too. Looking back, I'm like, why'd you tell me? And like, there was a long period of time where I knew. My 11th birthday was a big moment. Kent and Emily Emily, I don't know why I say Kent. Emily was the creative one. She did everything, let's be real. She had thrown me a 11th birthday, and she had my great grandma on her side make me a birthday cake. And it was a Barbie birthday cake. It was one of those ones where it was like the Barbie standing up, but you make the cake around the Barbie. So it's like she's wearing a big dress. And Emily invited a ton of girls over from the church that I didn't know. I felt really awkward because I didn't know them and they knew each other. So they were already in their own little like cliques, but I just remember being like, I already have people skill issues. Like this is a bad place to be. And I was in that like awkward, ugly phase still, like just everything about, ooh. And the girls were giggling in the living room. And I remember it to this day. This is probably the worst thing I've ever done in my life. But like, I was like, oh, this cake is stupid. Who has a Barbie cake? Because I wanted to sound cool. Ugh, I hate myself. Because my great grandma, she put so much time and effort into it. And she was so proud of herself.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could tell. But I was trying to be cool for these girls that I didn't even know, which dumb. But after that, I got sent right up to my room and they had the birthday party without me, even though it was my birthday. Mm-hmm. So I would have done the same. If my kid did that, he would have suffered a lot worse. He would have been dead, like you don't disrespect your grandma like that.
Yeah.
So even to this day, I'm still so embarrassed about it. Like, that was tough. And then it must have been right after that they told me. But there was time. Like, I remember, like, dreading when I was going to have to leave. So, yeah, I just turned 11. They moved me up to, at least it was still in Michigan. It was in St. Louis, Elma area, Michigan, like near Mount Pleasant, a little bit south of Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And it's called the Baptist Children's Home. And that's pretty much where life just went to hell. Anyways, I don't remember them dropping me off.
You were 11, you said?
Yeah, I was 11. They told me, we'll come and visit you. I mean, I think they were only like a couple hours from me, maybe an hour and a half. We'll come visit you. We'll write to you. I think I got one letter. And it was from Kent. Visit? No. That was really hard for me, even still to this day. Like,
well, yeah, because I think that, they made the biggest impact. Like, you really connected with them.
They were a huge turning point in my life.
You connected with them. You looked at them as, like, this safe space, these parents to you.
Emily was the first woman that she was, like, everything to me. Like, even still to this day, it hurts, like.
Well, because they gave you something, they promised you something, and then they took it away. That is so hard and so painful for a child. And even the birthday cake thing, you can hate that you did that all you want, but at the same time, like, you were just a child trying to, like, you had so many things going on. Yeah. Plus, on top of it, you're that is such a normal thing to do. Yeah. Like, okay, yeah. A parent, if that happens and you disrespect your grandparent, like, yeah, I get it. Like, you punish the kid, whatever, but, like, you shouldn't be angry at yourself for that because you were just a kid trying to
No, I do get that.
Fit in where you could.
It's just that even back then, that's just not who I was. I was very self-conscious of other people's feelings. Yeah. Even at that age, like, I have always been, like, especially the elderly. I have such a love for the elderly community. And so I think that's why, because even to this day, like, I love going to the nursing home. I take my son there. And like, but that really bothered me that I did that.
Perfect people make mistakes.
Oh, I know.
And it's okay. And the thing is like, but prior to that, these two people that you loved and cherished so much were pulling away from you.
Yeah.
So you probably had such a whirlwind of emotions going on and just.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very confusing. It made sense when they were like, we're getting rid of you. I mean, obviously they didn't say that, but
Basically.
yes, they were getting rid of
Yeah.
me. I was inconvenient. I was a toy that was done being played with. It was all those thoughts. Like, just for a long time, I lived with a lot of anger. And not
Understandably
even
so.
so much towards Kent. Like, I do feel like I had a good relationship, but it was Emily. Emily was the one that, like, she was just like, we were meant to be. Like, she was everything to me.
Now, this might be skipping ahead, but have you reached out to them since?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Like, have you seen them since that or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Should we wait?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
You're gonna die.
okay.
You're gonna die.
So now
I'm gonna die telling you.
Okay, so you're at the Baptist place now, right?
So I'm at the Baptist Children's Home. It's set up the same way.
Okay.
You're in totally different houses. It's not a compound. I mean, you've got in Alma, there was, or where were St. Louis, that's where I lived. St. Louis. There was a house here and there was a house right across the street, and
Okay.
they both had lots of acreage.
Mhm.
And but they were big houses. They were set up with several rooms, and again, each house had 10 kids. It was co-ed. There wasn't just, this is only girls' house,
Okay.
this is only a boys' house. Well, actually, I take it back. They did, the house across the street was only for boys. But the difference was, this was a little bit of, these kids would come in because, you know, their parents were having some issues that their parents needed to take care of, and they needed a temporary spot for their kid. Most of the time it was kids had some big issues and the parents didn't know how to deal with them, and instead of maybe these kids going to juvie, they went here.
Mhm.
So it was like a kind of in between place for troubled kids. It's definitely known. They're not around anymore. But when it was known because the bad kids go here. I wasn't, though. I just didn't have parents. So I got there, and I think it was the Villanovas. I want to say Gloria and Bill. They had a daughter, Katie. She was young. She was like 2, I think. But they were great. They were fun. It was the same setup. We had relief house parents. They would go. I don't really remember too much about them. The dad, he very hands-on. He taught me like how to build and use tools. And even to this day, I got hooked then.
Mhm.
We built a shed. We built a garden shed. And that's me on a course. Like, I love doing woodwork and building. So thanks to him.
Right.
Yeah.
Teaching you it.
So, but yeah, and like, he was fun. He built we lived on like a stream or a river, and we built a zip line to go across. I didn't really have too many bad experiences except for some of the kids. Because it was co-ed, there were some boys that came through the house that were like really inappropriate. I had a roommate, Ashley. She like beat me up and was like, I'm going to stab you to death. Like, it was just stuff like that. I felt like constantly. It wasn't, but at the time it felt like
Right.
it was a little scary. But I did not go there in the hopes that I would end up moving back like I did with Bill and Lydia. I just knew that it was never going to happen. Ken ended up sending me maybe 1 or 2 letters trying to describe what I would say is postpartum depression. Maybe that was the excuse that they were trying to pass off, because she had Megan, and then she had gotten pregnant with another kid that she had after she had sent me away. She had just had the baby by the time I had moved into the children's home. I don't believe it. I think there's a lot more like again, because you don't raise a kid for 3 years and then say no. So I don't know. It's still, even to this day, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever, I have not gotten the truth from them, and I don't think I ever will.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that. The only reason that I'm talking about it is because I'm telling you. But other than that, like, it's not something I dwell on. Every once in a while, I will think of Emily, how she's doing. But other than that, I don't care.
Right.
I'm over it. So I'm in the children's home. The Villanuevas, they were great. They were there pretty temporary. I think they were probably only there like maybe 9, 10 months. And then they ended up moving. She got pregnant with her second child. And then they ended up moving. And here's a group that I just don't remember. There was somebody there. We had somebody else. And then I had different parents. I think it was Richard and Darla. And they were different. I don't know how to say it. They had 2 little boys, Joshua, and I don't remember the younger one. And I just remember the one. He was like, I'm going to be a pastor when I grow up. And he would preach everywhere he went. And it was funny. But Rich and Darla, they just, as an adult, like I said, as an adult, I can look back and be like, man, they were just trying their best.
Yeah.
Because there was some older girls. Like I remember a big thing, like, and he must have felt so embarrassed, but a lot of us were going through puberty and changing and boy crazy. And like, I couldn't imagine like trying to be a parent, knowing that you're not the parent, but like trying to instill like good values that other people will accept without being a jerk about it. But I remember there was a girl in our house and she was wearing really short shorts. She had come back from a home visit. Home visit is basically when the kids are allowed to go home to their parents. And you know what? I should totally back up. I forgot about that. That was a big thing at the Sunshine Acres is during the holidays and summertime, like the kids would go home to their parents.
Okay.
I was always the only kid left alone. It sucked. Like I remember Christmas morning, like waking up. Emily did make the best out of it. She was so awesome. She had amazing stocking for me and like just brought me into her family. But yeah, holidays were tough. Like Thanksgiving, I just remember I was always the only kid. Waking up to an empty, quiet house felt really weird and being like, oh, cool. You get to go home with your mom. That's awesome. Good for you. You know? So, but anyway, so back to the Baptist Children's Home. Rich and Darla, I remember there was a girl. She had come back from a home visit and she came back with like spaghetti strap and short shorts, like short boxer shorts. And he had pulled her aside and was like, hey, like, you need to change. It's inappropriate. And, well, why? You know, the whole cattiness of teenage girls. Plus, he's not her dad. So, and he's like, well, you know, you don't realize the temptation that you put on other boys, because we had boys living in our house, other boys or men when you wear stuff like that, you know. And I remember her just going off on him and me being like, yeah, you're a sicko. Like, and now as an adult, I'm like, man, like what he is saying is so true because it's like, you know, even I'm careful about what I wear, like what brings attention to you. And he was just trying to give her life example. Like, hey, you know, you're going to surround yourself with people that you attract. And if that's what you're attracting, that's fine. But you should know that. And in no way did I think he was saying like trying to be inappropriate and be like, you know, oh, I'm turned on by what you're wearing. He was just simply saying. And I remember that being a big moment in my life too, like of learning something. So that's one thing I learned from him as a house parent. Otherwise, I didn't really like him. I didn't really like her that much either. I mean, I don't think we didn't get along, but I don't remember them too much. Just like, oh, you know. So they were there. The kids did come and go a lot. It was a lot different than Sunshine Acres, where the kids were there a lot longer. Because I think, like I said, with Sunshine Acres, I think the parents had to like do their steps in order to get their kids back. Whereas with the children's home, the Baptist children's home, the parents were like, please take my kid, help me out. So it's a little bit different. So the kids rotated quite often. But I was a constant there. After Darla and Rich, they moved me into the house across the street, which I thought was really interesting because the house across the street was all boys and they they had a special program. I cannot remember what it's called. My brother told me yesterday and I just totally forgot. But it was a system where these kids came in, they were very troubled, like extra troubled. And you would have to go through a program in order to like be put in normal homes, I guess. And basically what it was is you had to ask permission for everything. Like literally everything. If I wanted to go into that hallway right there, I would have to say, Uncle Derek, may I please go into the hallway? And then if I needed to go from the hallway to the bathroom, Uncle Derek, can I please go into the bathroom? It was crazy.
Yeah. But
I did not have to do that.
So this was across the street, but this was still part of
it was
the
still
same,
part of the Baptist Children's Home.
but a
different house.
Okay.
It was a house specifically for really troubled boys.
And do you know why they put you over there?
I'm trying to remember. I think that I want to say a lot of the kids that I had lived with in the previous house with Rich and Darla, they had went home to their parents. And
you were the only girl over there?
Yeah. I think, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
But so this was Derek and Heather. They were cool. I did not have to go through the program, thank God. There's no way.
Yeah.
Like even looking back, like I probably would have been a nightmare if they made me, but why would they? Like I wasn't, obviously.
Right.
It was a very weird situation, I think, for the children's home because they had me and they were like, I could just always feel like we don't know what to do with this girl. Like she doesn't fit our program. She doesn't fit like with what we've got going on. But anyways, so Derek and Heather, they had, I think, 2 or 3 kids of their own. And they were little, like I want to say like 7, 5, and 3. Maybe they only had 2. I got along with them really great. It was temporary. I think it was probably only for 4 or 5, 6 months. Maybe it was longer. Everything kind of gets jumbled together. It's very hard to distinguish what happened. But I lived there. I had a good relationship with both of them. They never made me like, I don't remember ever being like mad at them or like, oh, these parents suck. Like I did. I know I had felt that way once with Rich and Darla. So far, good experiences with the few different parents that I had. Again, Derek and Heather really cared about the kids. You could tell, like, especially with the program that they were running. I mean, they had some kids that I remember some of these boys, like, it was interesting.
Yeah.
But they were fun. They let me be a kid. Like, I remember they would let me go on a bike ride with a couple of the kids and, like, just do some more independent stuff as I was getting into my preteen years. I had turned 12 by then. I think even when I was there, my 13th birthday was there with them. So yeah, speaking of bike rides. So the Baptist Children's Home, one of the things that they did in order to help like fund their programs and stuff for the kids is they would hold a bike-a-thon, a 50-mile bike-a-thon. And they would have us kids go and ask like local community members or house to house even, and to raise money for it. And that was my jam. I looked forward to it every year because you got a prize too if you earn the most money. Mm-hmm. I was winning that, like for sure. So we would do that. That's a memory I have there that we did every year. They were involved in our church, and I think that's when I really started to want a relationship with Christ and like want to understand it. They would bring us to church and a lot of youth events, and they would listen to like Unshackled and Adventures in Odyssey. Have you ever heard of Adventures in Odyssey? It's a kids program. It's really cute. My son listens to it. Unshackled is more like, it's kind of like really mini versions of your podcast, and how they turned their life around and got saved and, where their life went. So, but yeah, they were great. I want to say they ended up moving too, but I actually think I was still there, but they just I know why. They wanted to move me up to the Mount Pleasant home, which was about 30 minutes from that particular house because at that home, they sent us to private school. Actually, the whole time. When I got to the Baptist Children's Home, I went to Mount Pleasant Baptist Academy. And because of the drive, I think they just wanted me to be closer. So I ended up moving up to Mount Pleasant into a totally new home that was, again, co-ed. I'm trying to think who my first house parents were. I want to say it was Bill and Kathy. Bill and Kathy were Bill was the director of the children's home, but I think because they were short-staffed or something, they ended up house parenting. I don't exactly remember the timeline of it, but I just remember they were our parents for a short period of time. And then it was during that time that I think I remember that Bill became my guardian. Because Lydia came up to visit, which I thought was really weird. I hadn't seen her since I was 8.
And you were how old at this point?
I am 13.
Okay.
She had flown up to Michigan, and I remember her saying she was there to sign papers and stuff. She said it was because of the dog bite, but now that I'm looking at it, I don't think that's what it was. I think she was signing over her parental rights again or doing something. Oh, you know what? She was the custodian of. So when I got bit by the dog, their insurance, the other family that had the dog, they had settled so that I could still have extra if I needed any more surgeries and stuff, which I did. So I think she was taking care of maybe that. I actually really don't know because they signed their rights away to Sunshine Acres.
Yeah.
And then obviously they gave their rights to Kent and Emily. It was crazy. Like, that's why I say it's a weird thing because I definitely wouldn't say foster care because it's nothing like that. But it's also not group homes because I really did have people that were like, okay, we want to adopt you.
Yeah.
So many times. So it's weird to categorize the story. But so
Bill became your guardian. And
Bill
Lydia
became,
came to
yes.
visit.
And I don't know why. I just remember she was there for a couple days.
Did you see her?
Yeah. She took me out to lunch. She took me shopping, which I also know now that I'm older that all the stuff we did, I remember thinking wow, I didn't know you had money. It was my money from my dog bite. I just had a thought I really actually don't know how much I was ever awarded for the dog bite. I don't know if the children's home ever got any of it because let's be honest, it's not a free program. I asked my brothers last night, did your parents have to pay to send you? And they were like, oh yeah. So that just occurred to me that who knows, she could have been there to give them some of the money that I was awarded for the dog bite. Probably not. Allegedly. Maybe. I don't know.
Right.
That's just me thinking. But yeah, she was there and it doesn't make sense. Nothing else would make sense but that.
Right.
Because she had already signed her rights away. So yeah, I don't know. Anyways, but he became my guardian after that. So I lived with them. Bill and Kathy, they were interesting. They were very strict. I just remember it was walking on eggshells around them. And then when he was like, I'm your guardian now, I'm like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Right.
But I don't remember anything negative about them. There's nothing that I'm like, oh, you did this to me or no. I mean, they were nice. They were very nice people. I remember they took us out on a lake day and that was really fun. But yeah, they were gone after a little while and we had new house parents.
So how does that work? So if Bill became your guardian, then he would have to sign the rights over to whoever is new again?
Yes, which he did. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of passing around.
All right.
It was yeah.
Okay, so who was next?
I believe it was Phil and Margaret.
Okay. Still 13?
Possibly 14.
Okay. But you're still within this Baptist church?
Children's Home.
Okay.
Yes. I'm here until I'm 17. Yeah. So, yep. Phil and Margaret. He was an ex-Vietnam War vet. And she, I believe, was an older, she used to be a teacher, a school teacher or something like that. So, very strict. Very old school. Very no nonsense.
And the amount of adapting you had to do, I'm sure, to all these different parenting styles, you could say, and
Yes.
personalities. It's like
They were all so different.
Mm-hmm.
But at least one thing I will say is, at least I wasn't passed to different homes.
yeah.
You know, like I know some kids go through foster care and they're like, yeah, I was in 30 different houses. And it's like, oh, that would
Right.
be tough. Because not only are you in a new environment, but you're new parents too.
Mm-hmm.
New schools, new everything normally. But anyway, so Phil and Margaret, they were interesting because they were older. They had already had full-grown kids. I have no idea what possessed them to be like, yeah, let's go take care of these teenage kids that are all like crazy.
Mm-hmm. At this point, did you have any type of like, I guess, were you acting out in any types of ways? Did you have any like anger that you felt, or you're just like cruising through now?
I'm just cruising through.
Okay.
And I even asked my husband, I'm like, because my husband and I have known each other since we were 15. I'm like, was there like any part where you're like, I've told you everything, you know me since I've been a kid. Like, would you say like, what's the worst thing I've ever done? And even, I think this was yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, I asked him because I'm like, what's my worst flaw?
Yeah. Just to get like a different perspective.
I'm like, you can be honest. I don't care. And he couldn't think of them. I'm like, here, let me tell you yours first so you can feel good about doing it. So yeah, no. I mean, honestly, I didn't struggle with anything until I went boy crazy, which was until like 15.
Okay.
I think in my earlier childhood, I would lie, but like the only time I lied was to like I said, when nobody else would admit it, like I was always, it didn't matter which house I was in. I'd be like, yep, I did it. Like, what's the worst consequence? Like, and then I think I got to the point where I was like, I might as well do it. Like I'm suffering the consequences for it. I'm going to do it. But it's always dumb stuff. Like who stole the candy bar or but no, like I can be honest with myself and be like, the worst character trait that I had was that I would seek attention. Like, hey, what are you doing? Do you need a hand? Can I help you? Like, I'm sure I was so annoying.
But I feel like that's normal.
Yeah. So Phil and Margaret, they were like the strictest, and they were very verbally abusive, especially to some of the boys. I think Phil, he obviously had some stuff that he went through with Vietnam, and like we would be reminded that, well, he was in Vietnam. And it's like, at that time, we had no clue what that meant. Now that I've done a lot of research about Vietnam, I'm like, yep, that makes sense. Depending on what he did, which we never found out what he did. But yeah, he was just grumpy. There was just a grumpy guy, like, miserable. He's one of the people you don't want to be around because they're just, you can feel their energy. And then Margaret, she was bigger. I remember she was doing a lot to like lose weight, which she did. She was like, yeah, I lost 30 pounds just by going like this. And I'm like, I hate you so much. Like, good for you. But I don't remember too much about them except for that they were very like just angry and they would yell. I had never really experienced that before. Like people yelling. I did do one bad thing. I snuck out the window. Me and my sister, Lindsay, she and I were roommates, and we lived in the basement, but it was like a tri-level, so you could like easily go out the window and like ground floor, We would sneak out, and we went behind the school dumpster and smoked a cigarette. It was my first cigarette. And I'm like, ugh, this is gross. Like, never did that again. But I did it.
Had to try.
Yeah, I did it. It was just a lot of that, like just trying new things. And like one time we snuck out, there was a neighbor that had just gotten a free house from Habitat for Humanity. And they had a boy, and it's like, he was interested in me. I really wasn't interested in him, but I was like, this could be fun, But other than that, they caught us. I think somebody told on us. Jerk.
Right.
Anyways.
Why not let you just have fun?
Yeah. But I don't remember too much from them. Luckily I had this school. So I was going to Mount Pleasant Baptist Academy, private Christian school, and our classes were pretty small. Mine was actually pretty big. I think we had like 12 or 13 kids. And you know, it was pretty equal, half girls, half boys. I had gone through a phase where I did not like the girls. There's too much drama, and like I was very tomboy. Like so much so I wore boy clothes, which is scary because in today's world I'm like, shoot, what, like I have been like transition. Like I hope not, but I just loved being around the boys. There's no drama. Everybody played football. Everybody was cool, and I was accepted. And that was really cool. I remember being like, oh, I'm the same height as you to a boy. Oh, we're the same weight, 136. Now I'm like, man, I would kill, like, what? 136? But I was, it was like, that's when I started going through my awkward transition. Like, I remember one of the house parents be like, you grew boobs. It was a dude too. I don't remember which one it was. He's like, oh, you grew boobs. And I'm like, should you tell me that?
Right.
But I did. I grew them like overnight. And I got tall and super skinny, like 90 pounds. Just very petite. I played a lot of sports. I ran track. I really didn't like running, but any excuse to be away from the house.
Yeah.
I would do every sport. I played track. I played basketball. We didn't have, I think they had soccer. I didn't play that. But I really loved that. I really loved being competitive and being first. If you're not first, you're last, right? So I was very competitive. Mentally, like I always had to win. But the crazy thing is I never had to do it for anybody else. I loved that. Like I loved that trait of myself, is that I was doing it for myself. Like I just wanted to be the best because I could.
Right.
And I wanted it. Yeah, the school was great. I had my first crush on Bjorn Carlson. He was, I think, a grade above me or grade lower. It's funny because my brother pulled out a picture and I'm like, how? Like,
right,
no way. What was I thinking? Yeah. No way. But like, I look at my journals and I'm like, oh, geez, girl, like you are obsessed. Get over it. He did not like me back.
Yeah.
Which, whatever. His loss. But it was a very, very small school. So everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody's business. Eventually, I kind of got out of that tomboy phase. And I started realizing once I got boobs, I was like, I should brush my hair. I should maybe put a little bit of makeup on. So I transitioned to that part where I was almost girly girl. Yeah, the girls in my class were really great. I had two best friends, Tamara and Jenny. Jenny, I became friends with her once again because her mom gave her a bowl cut as well. And we matched and we hated our lives. So, very, very interesting because she's very quiet, the A+ student. I used to call her goody two shoes, never would get in trouble. But I also really connected with her because she was adopted. She was adopted, I believe, at birth, or maybe she was very young. And then Tamara, she just was down to try anything. I needed somebody like that. Yeah. But school was great. I really loved school. I loved sports. I did excel once I understood some of the properties of the English language and stuff like that. I enjoyed, doing topics and stuff in English and enjoyed that. My teachers were all really great. And the nice thing about the school was I didn't feel judged. Everybody knew we were from the Baptist Children's Home. But I never felt like that I was different or that I was stupid or that I needed to make a point to be different. So that was cool. But back to Phil and Margaret. I think they had too much of a taste and they were ready to leave. And they did. And then we had Jeff and Raina. So Jeff and Raina, I want to say, were already house parents down in St. Louis. And they, man, I really don't know how they ended up coming up to Mount Pleasant. But anyways, they ended up coming to our house. And I was actually kind of excited at the time because I had gotten along with Raina during other like activities and just different events that we did. I think they were also relief house parents.
Okay.
So sometimes like we would have them, and every time she was really cool. Like I remember like she taught me how to pluck my eyebrows, like back when it was like cool to like have the paper line.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did that. But she was like, no, girl, let's do it this way. Yeah. And like ever since then, I'm like, oh, she's so right. She was fun. I really liked both of them. But it changed after time. So by this time I'm like 14. No, I missed somebody before Jeff and Raina. Okay. Jeff and Raina are relief house parents. That's how I know them. I think they came in temporarily between Phil and Margaret just for a few weeks or maybe a month or two to fill in before the next house parents, which were Jessica and Wayne Graves. And they were the best house parents I've ever had. They were also younger. Jessica had just had her first baby, Paul, and he was probably only like 6 months old. He was little. I remember him being very, very little. And I remember the day they moved in, they had their baby like sitting up on like a table like this. And I was like showing them something. And I remember being like, and look, and I went like this and like I hit that baby so hard. Yeah, that was my very first interaction with them.
Oh,
and
gosh.
That sucked. But no, they were great. They yeah, Jessica, it's funny because again, I was talking to my two brothers like, let's do a refresh. Like they didn't know. They don't know that I'm doing this.
Okay.
My one brother does, but my other one and my sister, she doesn't know. I haven't told them. I'm not gonna. But I was getting like, hey, do you remember this? Like, tell me about it. Because that is one thing that I noticed a lot is my memories are so bad. And I think it's because I blocked so much out. But so they were like, oh, yeah, Jessica, she used to be like, she was the dominant one. She was the one that wore the pants. I'm like, I don't remember that at all. Like, so it's funny how our perspectives are different. But so Wayne, he taught me how to change the oil in a car, and he took me on like a special pre-homecoming date with one of the younger boys that lived in the house. And it was he just really cared. They hadn't been parents, so I think it was like a learning curve for them, and they were just trying to, well, what would I like? Yeah. How were my parents? They were great. It was interesting over time to see which parents were doing a job or which parents cared about you. And I always knew which ones. These ones cared about us. They let me be a teenager. Like they let me have a crush. They would talk to me about it. Like just like stuff like if I had a mom, like, I would want that. So one of the things that the children's home offered was they were really good about people sponsoring the kids to be able to go to Bible camp. So we would do a family camp every summer and then also a teen camp. And that year, I was 15 with Wayne and Jessica. We went up to Northland Baptist Bible Camp, and that's where I met my husband. But even at the camp, I remember meeting my husband and being like, I actually liked his friend. And like he was just like a tag along. And then I don't know, it was something about, I think his friend did something cringy, and I was like, And then at that age, I'm like, well, I guess I'll go for you.
Yeah.
But then I started really liking him. Like, he was really nice and like just different, and he didn't need to be cool. He didn't try to show off. But anyways, I just remember after camp, Jessica was like, hey, I saw you talking to that boy. Like, you want to talk about? And she'd be like, oh, this was before like right at the cusp of internet too. Like, we were still sending snail mail, and like she'd be like, oh, don't forget this, add this into it. And she was just so great. She genuinely cared. And yeah, she was just fun. It's surprising actually as I'm telling you this, because as an adult, I feel like, and you'll understand as I get more into it, but as an adult, I feel like it was always the women that I had so much problems with. But like I'm telling you, all these women, I'm like, yeah, I loved them.
Yeah.
So it's weird. But Wayne was great too. He was very, he's just such a sensitive, gentle soul. Like he was definitely born like 200 years ago. Very polite and respectful. And you could tell he really, like, before he would say what he would say, he would think about it. Like, he just, man, what a good guy. Like, he was, even to this day, like, I still, every once in a while, I'll send him a little note or something. Just, they're just the sweetest family. Yeah, I had my first boyfriend, my husband, John David, and we were at camp. I had my first kiss. We snuck away into the men's dorms and met up in the stairwell. He gave me a Mentos beforehand, obviously. Super romantic. But no, we would go to camp, summer camps. Lake Ann is how actually Wayne and Jessica, still to this day, their baby, Paul, grew up, and he's a camp counselor at Lake Ann Baptist Bible Camp. And so I think that's so cool, like to see the full circle. But that's how they got us involved to that. And even actually, I send my own son to Lake Ann now. That's so awesome. It's just so cool. Yeah. So that's the impact they made on me, and I can change your oil if you need. Mm-hmm. So school is going good. I'm starting to realize that I like every boy that goes by me. I am pretty sheltered. I mean, the only time I meet new people is either at church or school. And our school's so small, we never get any new kids. And yeah, so I liked everyone. I was ready. Like, even though I had John David, it was different because he was, in Wisconsin and I was in Michigan, and we lived pretty far apart. So it was just one of those, like, it was nice to have a pen pal and, the fantasy of like, yeah, I love you so much. We're going to get married. Yeah. Like, that was never going to happen. So it's so weird, like, saying all this and like smiling about it, because another thing I did to like look back and like think about what I wanted to share on this podcast was I read through some of my diaries. That was another thing. I kept a lot of diaries. It got to a point where I had a full diary where the opening sentence was, "Today was the worst day of my life." And then it would go into detail. And then the next day, I know that I said yesterday was, but no, today, and it was every day. Today was the worst day of my life. So Wayne and Jessica ended up leaving. And they had another kid, Olivia. I don't think they had her while we were there. I think it was after they moved. And that's when Jeff and Raina came back. And I was like I said, I was pretty excited because I had overall gotten along with them and interacted well with them. They had 3 kids. They had 2 daughters and a son. And Jeff was pretty down to earth. And he was also, I want to say he was the youth pastor. I can't remember. I think he was, or he helped be the youth pastor. And so he was fun. He always had really cool games and, just group activities. So it worked well. Slowly after they moved in, Lindsay, my sister, moved in. She has her own story, so I won't really talk too much about her, but she struggled with a lot of stuff. And they she, again, because she was coming from a little bit of a troubled situation, and she needed to be there. But I remember she moved in with 2 Korn CDs, and listening to secular music was like, you're going to hell. Mm-hmm. And they took her CD collection away. I remember how mad she was. Like, can you believe that? And then I was like, well, I moved here when I was 11. So no, I've never had a CD before. Like, you know, but it was just interesting. I got along really great with her pretty much right off the bat. Even though it's funny because today we're a lot different personalities, but we still talk and get along really well. But Jeff and Raina, they started to change when a girl named Diana moved back to the children's home. I can't remember if she was just in a different house or if she had gone home and then her mom sent her back or what the situation was. But she was temporary and then she was gone and then she came back. Raina and Jeff really loved Diana, like so much so, like we knew they wanted to adopt her, whatever. Cool, do it. What, you know, they were very close with her, but it started getting weirdly toxic. Like I don't even know how to describe it. Like they would say that I wanted to like take Diana's place or I don't know. It's kind of confusing because
the house parents would say
yes.
this?
Okay. And like, I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I like you guys, but I would never want you to be my parents. No way. It never even crossed my mind, which, you know, I should mention, like, unfortunately, that's something I fantasized a lot about. Like, maybe they could be my parents. You never know. Like somebody new from school or somebody, which there was a lot of that, a ton of different people from churches and stuff. Like, we want to adopt you. And I'm like, oh, don't tell me. Like, that's never going to happen. Yeah. But like with Jeff and Raina, I never one time was fantasized like, oh, I wish they would. No. They were house parents. They were good house parents. But it just that, I don't know, like that wasn't it for me. But they started slowly. And I want to say it was mainly Raina. She is so vile. Like, even to this day, I have nothing nice to say about her. And it's funny because my brother just told me, yeah, sometimes she asks about you. And I'm like, don't tell her anything. She doesn't get to know anything. She is dead to me. Like, they both are. Like, so she would do like crazy things. Like I was telling my brothers last night, like dress code was a strict thing. Like our school did have a dress code, but like they were even more strict on what girls could wear. Like I do understand modesty and like, but they took it to a whole new level. Like I remember I went with Lindsay. She was only there temporary. She had moved out and she moved back in with her grandma. And I went with her and another school friend to the mall, which I'm like, I can't believe they let me go to the mall, but they let me go to the mall with her. And I had bought a new pair of jeans from the Buckle. They were my first, like, I had saved up all my money in the world because they were like $70. I bought a pair of silver jeans. And I was so proud. Like, I bought these with my own money. And I got back and I tried them on because Raina was like, I need to make sure that they're appropriate. I'm like, they're bell bottoms. Like, oh my gosh, those look like you have a baseball bat stuck up your butt. And I was just like, one, that doesn't even make sense. Yeah. I was like 15, 16 years old. No, I was 15. 16? I don't know. But I was just like, oh, man, you're so rude. Like, can't you just... She knew how excited I was, and she always had to rain down on that. Like, it didn't matter what it was, whether it was basketball, like something that I loved. It was always a negative comment. Always. And it just got so crazy. Like, I couldn't do or say anything without her criticizing me. One of the biggest things that I remember with her, I told my brothers this, like, it's funny because they have good experiences with Jeff and Raina. And like when I was mentioning a couple things last night, they were like, oh my gosh, you're right. I totally know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you mean. Like, it was so bad with Jeff and Raina. My brother Ben told me last night, he was like, you weren't even in the house during this time. I was like, yeah, I was. I was just locked in my room. Like, you don't remember a whole period of our lives because I was locked away. So Jeff and Raina, it started with little critiques and then it just built and built and built. And I have no idea like why they hated me so much, but they did. It was Christmas. a lot of people would donate stuff like Bath and Body Works and honestly like a lot of junk to give to us kids. So we had stuff for Christmas. Granted, all the other kids, they got stuff from their parents and cool stuff. But anyways, I got this sweater. I remember when I opened it, I remember particularly being like, this is butt ugly. I'm not wearing this. But then I want to say it was later that night or the next day, I was walking down the hall and I heard Raina talking to Diana, the girl that was my age that they wanted to adopt. And they were saying, like, how long do you think it's going to be before Jessica complains about the ugly sweater we gave her? Like a setup.
Yeah.
Oh, I wore that sweater. I never said none.
Good.
But I do remember, like, that was the moment that I realized, like, you're purposely doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're trying to pass it off that you're a good person and that I'm the problem because I'm the troubled kid. Like, that irked me. Even then, at that age, I knew exactly what game she was playing. And it just was so gross. And so I hated them from like the less I had to speak with them or interact with them, the better. Well, unfortunately, it got worse from there. I played sports, but they decided to take that away. And I cannot remember the specific thing that I supposedly did or didn't do, but they would not let me play on the basketball team. And that was awful for me because I was very competitive. I wouldn't say I was a great player. I mean, if I had to say, I would be like, I was the best. I definitely wasn't. But I had that confidence that I was the best, even though I wasn't. But I just loved it so much. And they took that away from me. And they knew what they were doing when they took it away. And then it was like, okay, not only are we going to take that away, but now we're also thinking that you're anorexic. Because I've always been very petite. Like, you saw my son. He's very petite. That was me. Like, that, I was just a small person. And they said I was anorexic. I'm like, you see me eat all the time. Like, you literally watch us when we eat. Like, I can pound a whole pizza, okay? Like, so because of that, they decided to drop me off at my locker at school, pick me up for lunch. I was not allowed to eat lunch in the cafeteria. Pick me up from school at my locker. I had to wait for them to come and pick me up. And then they would make me drink special shakes with raw eggs and like Ensures and stuff like that, which I'm like, I don't know what you hope to gain. I don't think I put on any weight. But I was drinking these nasty Ensure shakes all the time. They grounded me to my room. Like, I was not allowed to leave my room without asking permission. And that's where it comes back to the story of my brother didn't even realize I lived in the house at the same time as him during that period of our lives because I was just always hidden away. I was not allowed to be involved in activities, church activities. It sucked. It sucked so bad I ran away. I was over it. I said enough is enough. And I ran away to Tamara's house. Her dad was a state trooper. And but he was the safest. Like, he knew my situation. He knew Tamara was my best friend, so she knew everything that I was going through. And I know I told her dad and mom quite a few things that I didn't agree with that, I thought, this is questionable at this children's home. Like, there were a couple things. Like, if we lied, we ended up having to pick up rocks, like big boulder type rocks, and you'd have to move them from like one tree to the other, which, whatever, not that big of a deal, but you'd have to do 20 and it was a pretty far distance. It would take time. Not anything that like hurt us. But if we swore, meaning like I couldn't even say crap, like that was, we would have to dig a 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot hole and then bury it. And one time I had the bright idea to write out the lyrics to all of Nelly's first CD. I was digging for days.
Yeah. You were in the hole.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. So it's just like little stuff that I'm like,
Yeah.
and just the way they treated us and,
Right.
you know, some other questionable things.
So how old were you when you ran away?
I was 16.
Okay.
I was 16 years old. Yep. So the first time I ran away, I just was like, I'm done. Bye. See ya. And I went out the back door. And I was with her at her house. Like, I think right away, they ended up moving me back down to the St. Louis home with different house parents. Oh, I think that's during this. So I don't remember these house parents' names. They obviously didn't like me because Jeff and Raina had told them what a terrible kid I was and all these problems, and that, you know, they couldn't handle me anymore, and so they're moving me down here. I need to back up too. Actually, after Lindsay moved out when I was like 14 or 15, I ended up not only being the only girl in the house, but I was the only white person. Which I didn't realize at the time. Like, that had never been something that like crossed my mind. Color, like, never. Like, my homecoming dates were always like, I always dated a black guy. Like, I never crossed my mind until my brother last night was like, you know that I think it's crazy you were the only white person. I'm like, oh, I wasn't I? And he's like, yeah, I can't believe you were a white girl. You were the white girl in the family. I'm like, well, now that you put it that way, like, yeah. But so I think that dynamic with it all being boys was really different. And my brothers gave me a lot of insight too on like when they moved in, they were very like, I guess Tito wasn't. Tito was really little. His mom just couldn't take care of him. But the other ones, they had some major issues. They should have been in juvie. One should have been in jail for sure. But it was a great alternative. And so they were telling me that not only did their parents have to pay to send them to this program, but that Jeff and Bill went out to the hood to get them. They called it the hood. I don't know what part of New York it was. The boroughs. They went out to get them, and they did home visits there in New York twice before they brought them all over here, which also I was telling my brother last night. I was like, yeah, that is different because up until you guys, it was always white kids. I mean, there was a couple here and there, but it was mostly white dominant. But again, as a kid, I never noticed those things. Like, why would I? It wasn't talked about like it's just normal, which I love. I loved that. I didn't have any questions about that. But it was interesting hearing them tell me those things because I didn't realize it. So I ran away and I was down in the St. Louis home again with new house parents. Hated me because of whatever Jeff and Raina had told them, that I was a terrible person. I also at this time ended up, I liked John David, but he wasn't around. And I got a new boyfriend. He was on the soccer team. His name was Larry. He was cute, but honestly, this sounds so horrible. I really only dated him just to piss Jeff and Raina off. You know, that sounds so terrible because he was really nice to me and he really liked me. I did not like him, but there was a lot of things where I'm like, I would never date somebody like you, like in real life. His mom was really wonderful. But yeah, so I was dating this Larry guy, and I was also experimenting a lot with, who I was. I was still a virgin. And yeah, so it was fun. And I would write very, detailed notes.
In the diary?
Yeah. No, this was a letter that I had written to Larry, and I left it in my pocket. You know, the good old, I was washing your clothes for you, and I found something. So that happened. And they found this letter really bad. It went downhill from there.
Yeah.
So I was at school. I'm like, I'm going to run away again.
And then this is when you planned it out.
Yeah, this is where I planned it out. I'm like, I'm going to run away again. I'm almost 17. Like, I think I was like 2 or 3 months from being 17. I was like, I can emancipate myself and I'll just take care of myself. No biggie. So I went to school that day and I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to school and I'm going to miss the bus. Cause there was, a bus that like started bringing people back down to St. Louis. I'm going to miss it. And then I'll just go home with Tamara. She knew the plan. Well, lo and behold, that day, somebody from St. Louis decided to drive the big old red van up to pick us all up. And I was like, well, this sucks. Now your plan's gone. So I get in the van and we go to Meyer. And that's when I was like, see ya. They had us all in a line and they were getting the groceries and I just booked in. I went to Tamara's house. And then we went to her aunt's house, her Aunt Tara's house. And this is where the story turns again. I ended up moving in with my aunt and uncle, Emily's sister.
Okay.
Emily's sister, Kristen, and her husband, Joel, who's younger. So Joel and Kristen, I had known them even when I lived in the children's home in Arizona. They had come out to visit. They weren't married yet. They were in college. They had come out to visit, and they were equally as fun.
Mm-hmm.
And
so these two are related to Kent and Emily, right?
yes. So
Okay.
Joel and Kristen. Kristen is Emily's biological sister.
Okay.
Younger biological sister.
Okay.
So when Kent and Emily dumped me, Kristen had a little bit of a hard time with that.
Okay.
She didn't understand what was going on, but she really involved herself in my life. She would write letters and she would even bring me on home visits.
So this was even like after the fact, like throughout, up until
I running away. So
Okay.
I had gotten close with
Got it.
Joel and Kristen. I had
Okay.
gotten close with them. I had never lived with them before, but I had gotten to know them really well through, like I said, they would come and take me for a weekend and we'd go to like a Harlem Globetrotters game or just they really took the time to like get to know who I was. They had known me before because like when Kent and Emily were adopting me, obviously we'd spend Christmas together or holidays. Like I would see them around. So it's not like I had no idea or they had no idea who I was. So they inserted themselves in my life pretty young age, and then they just kept a consistency. And when I say they, I mainly mean Kristen. She did a really good job at like sending me cards, and she was, I don't know if I had to put a finger on it, who's more creative and who's more like crafty. I don't know. They both are. They're both so talented. But anyways, she was just really thoughtful, and she would send me notes and just.
So did they know that you ran away that second time?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I ran away the first time, another reason why I ended up being down in St. Louis is so Tamara, my best friend, her dad was a state trooper. And that's whose house I ran away to because I felt safe there. Joel is also a state trooper for Michigan. So they had that connection and they were able to be like, hey, Joel, this is what's happening to Jessica. And, Joel and Kristen just took matters into their own hand. They were like, we don't want her living in that house again. We've heard what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
No. So they put me down in the St. Louis house. And then after the whole explicit letter, they were like, I was like, I remember thinking like, why don't you guys just let me live with you? Like you guys know me enough.
Yeah.
And so that's what they did. After like a few weeks of living down in St. Louis, they said, we're just going to adopt you. And I think the children's home finally got so sick and tired of like what do we do with this case? Because that's the other thing. Like, I don't know how that worked, whether they got any money from my settlement for taking care of me, or I think they got some state funding for me because in the end, I ended up being a ward of the state that the Baptist Children's Home took care of.
Okay.
And then Bill was the guardian so he was the decision maker.
Mm-hmm.
It's all really confusing to me. But anyways, Joel and Kristen were like, hey, we want to take care of her. We want her to move in. And it was during the middle. There was only like a few months left of school too. That was the other thing. But I think it had got to the breaking point for everyone involved that was like, they finally like actually thought, let's do what's best for Jessica. So I moved in with Joel and Kristen. And it was awesome. Like, it was so cool because I had grown to really love them both because they made the effort to come and visit me, even though they had no responsibility to. They could have just easily said, oh, my sister sucks and she, dumped you off. So, we don't have to deal with this either. Yeah, good luck. Yeah. But they didn't. And they like really did. They invested a lot of time and effort into me. And so I was really excited. Kristen had also just had a baby. She had her first baby, who was only like less than a year old, I believe. So it was just perfect. Oh yeah, she was turning 1 in May because their baby's daughter was 3 days before mine. So, yeah, I moved in with them, and it was a little bit different because I got along with both her and Joel equally. Like, I really liked both of them equally, but for different reasons, which is a little bit different because normally the male figure I didn't really have. I did not have a relationship. Wayne would have been the first person that I was like, I like this guy. He's really cool. Besides Kent, like, but I didn't, again, like even with Kent, wasn't like super close to. I don't have too many memories of him. But so I moved in with Joel and Kristen, and they let me finish my school, like homeschool basically. And then she immediately put me on like lifeguard classes to become a lifeguard at the local pool, just to have something for me to do. I didn't have my driver's license or anything. You know, I was just about to turn 17. So yeah, everything went really smoothly. I turned 17. Things were going really good. It was the same thing. You know, they both were like, you know, we're so happy to have you part of our family. Like, you know, we're never going to get rid of you. And the same spiel. Again, I don't know what happened. Kristen started to act different. Like, she just started to be withdrawn, and like I could tell like I was just annoying to her, which was surprising because like I didn't get bad grades. I'd gotten to the point in my life where I just didn't lie about anything, like annoyingly didn't lie. Like, you know how when you tell somebody something, even though it's true, they are like, are they telling the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's sounds crazy. Like, because I had gotten so used to, what's the point of lying? Like, I'm going to get in trouble either way. I'm just going to tell the truth. Well, Kristen thought everything I did and said was a lie. It got to that point, and I'm like, I have no reason to lie. Like, it didn't matter what I did. Everything was twisted. Like, things were great. Like, I'm still like so confused how it happened. Things were great, and then all of a sudden, she used to keep a diary too. Her diary to God. She left it out on the like TV stand or whatever, open. Coincidence?
Probably
No.
not. Yeah.
Dear God, I have no desire to love this child. Please help me. They're a burden. I don't remember. Like, the rest was basically just going into like why I can't do this anymore. I don't know what I was thinking. And yeah, I can put myself in her shoes. 17, man, if I did that, that would be difficult. Because I think I'm around the age around the age right now when they decided to adopt me. So could I do it? Yeah, I definitely could. But I'm just trying to like give some lenience. Like, I always try. That's one thing that even as a kid, I've always tried to put myself in somebody else's shoe to understand where they're coming from,
Mm-hmm.
and like not always go to the first negative thing.
Yeah.
So anyways, she left that out for me to find. Oh, I found it. And it was over for me. Like, it's just, I'm never going to get adopted. I'll never have a mom and dad. I really broke at that point because I was debating on whether even I wanted to say this, because it's just, there's very few people who can even understand what I'm about to say. But growing up, I knew what it was like to just not be loved by anyone. Like, it's weird because it's like, it's a very empty feeling. But like, even as a kid, like I knew there was not a single person in the entire world that loved me. Like, if I had died as a child, nothing. And that's a weird thing to know. And I say that like I'm sure there were a couple, like I did have a couple house parents that like, I love that girl. She's so cool. But like truly love, like unconditionally.
Right.
I
Enough
had,
not to keep handing you off to other people.
yeah. And the problem was there's not like aunts and uncles and grandparents
Yeah.
that are out there like, oh, sorry, your parents, made these decisions, but we still love you.
Right.
There was nothing. Every time I was moved, it was like those families, once these parents made that decision, so did the grandparents and the aunts and uncles. I mean, except for Joel and Kristen, I should say, at that time. But, it had got to the point, I found a Christmas list. Literally the first thing on it is mom and dad. I think I was 7 or 8. Like, just, that's why I say, like, it doesn't even, like, I'm looking at a different person because I would never write. That's horrible. Like, that is so sad. I feel like that. I feel for that little girl. When I found that from her, especially because I idolized her, I had gotten to the point where I idolized her like I did with Emily. Like, I loved Emily. No, Kristen was a whole new, she was on the top of my pecking order. It went Kristen, Emily, Jessica, so it's just, it was very hard to see that. And I didn't know what to do. I stayed really quiet about it. I tried everything. I tried cutting my wrists. I tried to write extra in my diary. I tried to pray extra. I'm going to focus on my relationship with Christ. Which that did help. That literally is the only thing that saved me. But it was really difficult. Luckily, we were in the day of age where social media and stuff wasn't prevalent in our lives, and I would have never considered suicide because it wasn't something I didn't know about it. But if I had, that probably would have been the route. That's when I finally was like, what is wrong with me? Like, how? I'm so angry. I'm so hurt. I'm so, even now, I can just feel that feeling that I felt then. Like, what do I have to do? Why cannot? I just don't get why I can't be loved. And it just, she did it on purpose too. And she knew I idolized her. I've done everything you wanted. Gosh, that was just, it sucked. So I'm trying to reset, okay, this is it. I'm 17 years old. What can I do to reset? I can make them love me again. I'm gonna do it. I didn't. But I tried every little thing. Shortly after that, I noticed when I would get home from school, that's when I started attaching myself to Joel. Because Joel still liked me. He still wanted to, hang out with me. And, he didn't treat me any different. And I remember when I told him, eventually a couple days later, hey, I found this. He was like, what?
So do you think he knew?
Yeah, I do. I think he knew. Because shortly after that, Kristen, made this, huge deal. I'm just as hurt. And I'm going to go to a hotel for a couple days and really think about and evaluate my life. And maybe she did. Maybe she was like, what am I doing with myself? This is somebody's life I'm messing with. Yeah. I'm sure she did because she did love me. And maybe she was just going through confusion. I don't know. She got back. Things were okay for a little bit. And then just straight back, I think it was hard, dealing with a newborn. I'm sure there's all sorts of things. And, a lot of things were new for me. Getting my driver's license, and she took on a lot of responsibility for that, and then really honing in on my education and hey, make sure you're doing this. And I know it was stressful. I know it was a total I know what it's like. I've done it before, taking in a teenager and just totally throws your whole world upside down. So I wouldn't have done what she did though.
No, it's evil.
Yeah, now as an adult, like I'd feel that. That's why I get so angry when I think about it, because like you knew what you did. You set the stage for that to happen so that I would know, so that I don't know what she was thinking. Like maybe I would be more what she wanted me to be, or maybe I would decide to move out, because I know before that I had
But
already
like,
been talking about
but
emancipating.
what if you would have ended your life because of that? You know what I mean? Like, and I think that, I mean, to write something and leave it out for a child to see who's already experienced such instability in their life,
Mm-hmm.
like you don't know what
Yeah.
someone's gonna do.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking
Yeah.
and
It
hurtful.
was very hard. So after Kristen went back downhill, and I had already gotten to the point where I called them mom and dad. Like I told everybody, this is my mom. I was like, it was the first time I had called somebody mom in a very long time. I think the last person I called mom was Lydia. So it had been, 10
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
Um, but I was so proud. Like, this is my mom and dad. Like, I have a mom and dad. Like, it was almost like, just couldn't stop saying it. I could not like get over like, I have a mom. I'm so cool. Like, I know you have a mom, but mine's better. Like,
Yeah.
so after that, I really started clinging more to Joel, because he didn't treat me different. He didn't act different. He did stay Switzerland a lot, but he was just comfortable, and he didn't make me feel like I was a problem like she did. So after a little bit of time with Joel, like being comfortable around him, I started noticing things were really off. Like I'd come home from school and he'd give me a hug and he'd have an erection as he hugged me. And I didn't really know it at the time, like what was happening. Like I didn't realize how or why. I mean, I had dated Larry and I was still like a virgin though. Like I had done things with him, and it was different. It was just so different. He was supposed to be my dad. So when I experienced that the first time, it was after all this, and I was like, okay, that's disgusting. And then it happened again and again and again and again and again and again. And I quickly realized how negative my relationship with Kristen was going, but I was going to save it at any cost. And that meant me being okay with the inappropriate hugs, maybe encouraging them. Not maybe, I did. I knew what was happening, and I let it, because it's crazy. I literally thought like, okay, if I let him do inappropriate things to me, then I'll still be in the family.
Yeah, it was like
I'll still have a mom and dad.
searching for approval.
Yeah. I didn't want to be alone. I knew that it was too late for me to like ever get a mom and dad again. And so I was ready to sell my soul to the devil to keep that family. And I did. I mean, I didn't, but like, I feel like I did. The hugs ended up turning into inappropriate touching or looking at night when Kristen was in bed. And remember the first time that happened, and he thought I was asleep, and surprise, I'm not. And he was like, oh my gosh, let's go tell your mom right away. Let's get this out in the open. This can't happen. But it makes me so mad, because I wonder if he knew what he was doing. He knew already that he knew why I was okay with it. He knew that I was okay with it because I did not want to lose my family. So by him asking me, let's go tell your mom, like, if I tell her, I'm going to lose her.
Right.
If I don't tell her, then I just have to sell myself to you. But I'll still have a family. And that was worth it to me. It got very inappropriate. I never had sex with him, but the gross part is I probably would have, even though I was still a virgin. I probably would have.
Did you have any sense of fear about the situation or what was going on, or it was just mainly?
My fear was losing my family.
Okay.
My fear was I'm not going to have a mom and dad, and I'll never have a mom and dad.
Yeah.
And I have worked my whole life waiting for this moment, and I'm not giving it up. I still genuinely believe that I could fix things.
How long did that go on for?
About 9 months.
Okay. And you were 17?
17. Yep. Yep. So you got a Michigan State Trooper and a child. And it's funny because I think to my mentality at that age where I knew it was wrong, but I was going to justify it in any way possible. And, you know, like even after like the guilt that I felt like, oh, you're such a slut. Like you are so gross. Like I just felt disgusted with myself for being willing, and not only being willing, but engaging in inappropriate acts because I knew that's what he wanted.
Do you think she knew at all? Or had any like idea or speculation?
I think she had an idea.
Okay.
Yeah, she definitely had a suspicion that something was happening, but I think she thought maybe he was having an affair, not necessarily like being inappropriate with me. Yeah. As an adult now, I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was a child. Mm-hmm. Not only because I had this flight or die mentality where I would have given anything, but he knew that. He knew I would have compromised myself to the fullest, and it would have gotten to that point. No doubt about it. It ended. I had touched him inappropriately because I thought that was what he was. I mean, he was wanting, that's what he wanted. I can't remember if I freaked out and told her or he freaked out and told her. Something happened where she found out. I cannot for the life. I have no idea. Yeah. It just went that night over. Mm-hmm. Like she knew that there was an inappropriate relationship happening. I legit thought she sat me down and I told her, I legit, even at that time, I was like, no, it was me. I instigated a lot of this, which I can't even believe that. Like I did, but I'm 17. Hello. I literally, I don't know. I knew what I was doing. I did, but as an adult, I just know the position that I was in to make that choice. She sat me down and we went through everything, every detail. She wanted to know everything. And I had, like I said, I had already gotten to the point where I was like, I don't need to lie about nothing. Like I told her everything, and maybe it was too brutally honest. Maybe it was too much for her to handle. I spilled everything, how long it's been happening, what's happening, where it's happening, how it's happening, what's going on, when it's happening.
Did you tell her that you found her journal or no?
She knew that. She knew that I found her journal way prior. Okay. That's why she went to the hotel to like.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. That's why I said it was super manipulative because it's like you left it out and then you knew that I would come to you and tell you. She knew I would. I'm not that. I will tell you everything. Mm-hmm. Like, so she knew. But yeah, so I told her everything that was going on with Joel. And she was like, don't you worry about it. Like, I'm keeping you forever. Like, I'm not going to stay with somebody like that. Like, even if you're saying is true, like she was a rational adult. Like, even if you have a 17-year-old that comes to you and says, yes, I was inappropriate with your husband, it does not matter. That is a child. And especially given the background of that child, that's a child. Like I can step out of that and see, oh my gosh, just like she did. You know, at first Kristen was like, no, he's wrong, disgusting, terrible person. So I'm there for a couple days and she's like, okay, I'm going to have you go stay with grandma and grandpa because I need to talk this out with Joel. She hadn't talked to him for like 4 or 5 days. She was devastated. rightly so. I have no idea what Joel told her, but that was the last time I was ever in that house. I know a little bit. He basically said that I initiated everything and that, he didn't really want to, but like, I forced myself onto him and, I was just trying to, that's what it was. I was trying to steal his family. Like I wanted her 2 kids and maybe she was pregnant. Anyways, I wanted that. I'm like, okay, anybody who knew me at that time knew I never wanted kids. Like I didn't want kids even up until I had my own. Like I did not ever want kids. So I just find that funny. But whatever,
So they stayed together.
Whatever happened, she chose him. And that was super hard. I was still 17. I was a junior in high school. Oh no, I might have just turned 18 I had just turned 18 when all this was going down. Like literally just turned 18. They had me live at my grandparents' house. My grandparents were gone, but they had rules for me. You still have to be up at this time. You still have to, your curfew is this. You have to go to school, do all these things. And obviously you can't have a boyfriend, which I didn't at the time. John David, but I don't really, he was a boyfriend. He was just my long, far away boyfriend. And yeah, so she kicked me out. Joel moved back in right away. And they started marriage counseling and like they started healing. Oh, and he admitted that he's a porn addict and the reason why he's made some of these that's like everything was a crutch.
Yeah.
Like everything was just such a lame excuse as to why he made the decisions he did. And nobody put together the fact that you molested a 17-year-old girl and you are a state trooper. You are the law. You are supposed to be the example. You're supposed to be above it all. What makes you think that you are? Like, I hate him. I ended up telling people, like, kind of. I told my art teacher, Mr. Mason, I said, hey, because he was also I think he worked for the county sheriff or something. Like I got to tell somebody, like what's going on. People are wondering why I started skipping school. I was never in school. My life was just like straight downhill. I lost everything. I was alone. I had no money. I was living in this house that was basically abandoned because I don't even know where the parents were. It was just crazy. Like at one point I was living in the back of my Chevy Blazer for a couple weeks and I'm, 17, 18. I don't know. I'm 18 years old. I'm working 2 jobs. I worked at a restaurant and I worked for a landscaping company. I finished school. I make it to summer. They want me to come to the church to talk to the pastor. Oh no, I totally forgot. They had, before they sent me to my grandparents' house, they had me live in a house with Mrs. McLean. They had me live with her at her house. She was a member of our church and she was an older lady and she had a daughter who was in her mid-20s. So I move into the house. All this is happening with Joel and Kristen. Like stuff is hitting the fan. He's lying about everything. I'm a terrible person because I broke up this marriage and I'm a whore. That's when I finally got sick of it. I was like, okay, if I'm going to be a whore, watch me. Mm. I got a boyfriend. I wasn't a whore. I just kind of felt like that because my mentality was like, I grew up in a like no sex before marriage and I really wanted to hold to that. Like no drugs, no alcohol, no nothing. I got a boyfriend, Lauren. He claimed to be this great Christian man. That's why I really liked him. I lost my virginity to him. And after he took that, he was so abusive and so horrible. That was that summer. I was still living in this house. Well, Mrs. McLean, she found out, Mrs. McCain, she found out that I had a boyfriend and he had picked me up from her house. She rushed home and she was like, oh my gosh, how dare you bring a boy into this house? I'm like, he's in your driveway. I'm going to school. Like, geez. Come to find out, her precious daughter was pregnant and she wasn't married. And I was like, calling the kettle black. Like, get out. And they kept it a secret and they thought I didn't know. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
Then come to find out, her previous boyfriend is the guy I'm dating. That's why Mrs. McCain came home and she was very angry. So anyways, I'm dating this guy. Joel and Kristen have all these rules for me. I go get ice cream late at night and they see me with Lauren and they're like, you're at a grocery store? It's 10. It's past your curfew. You're super grounded now. Like, whatever that means. I don't even live with you. And yet you have all these rules for me? No, I don't think so. I'm 18 now. You clearly hate me. You don't love me. And no, I'm just not doing it. And then I start dating Lauren. I move into the grandparents' house. And then I end up, while I'm at their house, I end up having, while I'm working, so by this time I am a senior in high school. I only had like a couple credits left. So I'm also taking college credits. So I'm in college. I think I was taking 13 credits. And I am working 2 jobs, the landscape company and the restaurant. And while I'm at the restaurant, one of the local doctors from town was there with her husband. And I had met her before because during this whole thing with Joel and Kristen set up an appointment for me to go see the doctor to get a pap smear and check to see if I had like STDs and whatever, because she wanted to know if like, and if I was a virgin. And I just thought that was crazy. I remember showing up and being like, I told this doctor, I'm like, because she was just really intuitive. She was like, is something wrong? I'm like, I like broke down. I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I've never even slept with anybody. Like, this is crazy and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do. She's like, if you don't feel comfortable doing this, I'm not going to. So she ended up just putting in like saline or something. And she's like, we'll just send this out. And I'm like, sorry, thank you so much. Anyways, she was super sweet. She had also come over one time when she had first moved into town because I had cut my thumb open and I needed a couple stitches. She came to the house. So I had met her a couple times. And then I also knew this doctor's husband, who was also a doctor in town, because he played on the intramural basketball team that me and Joel played on. So I had met him a couple times as well. So I ended up going to work that day and I see this doctor. Her name is Chrissy Whitaker, and her husband, Chad. Chrissy and Chad, they're sitting in a booth. I think they're like with other people from work and they're having dinner. And she sees me and she had remembered the previous encounter with the pap smear and stuff. And she pulls me aside and she's like, how are you? I've been really thinking about you. And I'm like, honestly, I was living in my car. It's like, actually, I'm living in my car right now. And I'm just like really frustrated and, things aren't going good. And she was like, we have this really big house. We have a really big house and there's tons of extra rooms. If you wanted to, you could move in. And I remember immediately being like, yes, like a shower, like warmth, a bed. Yes. So granted, I'm still in high school because I remember I had gotten held back in 3rd grade. So I did. I moved in with them and things were great. They were awesome, like super nice, super helpful. She was so sweet. Like, one time Kristen decided that it would be smart to leave a book on my doorstep. She found out I moved in with these doctors and she was furious. Like, how dare somebody else help her? She's probably going to ruin their lives too. Anyways, she was just negative. Like everything was just toxic. So I move in. Kristen comes and leaves The Giving Tree, the book The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, on the front door with a note in it that says, this is how I felt taking care of you. I hope you can understand. I'm like, Well, Chrissy, she had choice words. And she was like, no, don't even read that. We burned it that night. And the next day, she had a Shel Silverstein book. I think it was like The Big O. And it was like just the sweetest thing. She's like, you know what? You are a brave, independent woman. You know, you're growing and, you know, you're going to go places and you can use these experiences. And it was just such a sweet letter, like from a complete stranger. Like, because I barely known this lady, like 2 days I had moved in. That set her on fire. She's like, I'm going to give this girl everything. She took me prom dress shopping. She just was there for me. She's like, oh, you have an older boyfriend? We were a little bit different. She was like, definitely, just sleep with him, get it over with. I'm like, no, like I'm saving myself. Like, you know, like it was just, she was more wild and fun and like very experienced in life. I remember thinking like, wow, you're so worldly. Like I've been so sheltered. Yeah. And then Chad, he was just like, he's just your everyday, like, hey, what's up? Like just chill. He was fun. He taught me how to play board games. He taught me Settlers of Catan, and like he was very competitive. He played on the basketball team, and so it was crazy because even after Joel and Kristen kicked me out, I still played on that basketball team. And Chad would be like, "No, you're gonna show up." I'm like, "You're right. I am gonna show up." And they were just great. They were younger. I would say they were in their. They didn't have kids yet. They had tried. They were in their mid-30s. But like I said, they were both doctors, OBGYNs in town. And it was great. It was a good year that summer. Okay, so I had graduated high school, and no joke, Chad was there for my graduation. Like he had taken off work, like to make sure that he was there. He was there for my gymnastics meets. He was there for any sports like I remember thinking like, I don't even know you. Like I literally I didn't know him, but he was always there. He just wanted to make sure that somebody was there. And I like, even looking back, I'm like, oh. So they were great. That summer after I graduated, I was bridge jumping with my friends, and Chrissy had gotten me my first cell phone. And I thought it was so cool. Anyway, she called me. She's like, I need you to come home right now. And I was like, I knew they were going to ask me to leave. Like, I was just so like, I just knew it was coming. So anyways, I get there. They sit me down. It is serious. The sun had gone down. Like, I remember it was yesterday. Chad was sitting there like this. And he was contemplating like what to say. And I was like, it's fine. I get it. Whatever. Chrissy and I were talking, and we would like to adopt you. I couldn't believe it. I thought my chance was gone. But it wasn't. Like, here I was sitting here like ready. I already knew like they were going to ask me to move out. Like, and they didn't. There was no relationship. I mean, other than like a superficial, like barely getting to know each other. You know, we've been talking and we would like you to be part of our family. What do you think about that? I just remember being like, no. Me? Yes. I was so ecstatic. Like, you don't even know me, but you're taking a big risk. Like, I just never thought I would experience it again. And so I was so happy. And yeah, they were there. They were there for my wedding. They just immediately became my parents. When I went to college, you know, like they helped move me in, and Chad made special furniture for me, and like just they helped me financially sometimes. They were all in. Like, even to this day, I think back, I'm like, how did that happen? How did I get so lucky? And, Chrissy and I, every once in a while, we'd have a little bump. But most of the time, she was so like, it's okay. Things happen. We'll get over it. We'll work through it. And I remember thinking like, wow, how come nobody else did this? Like, that's crazy. She loved me unconditionally. And it was great. I ended up going to college and then I got married and then they got divorced. And that was weird for me. It was good because they were friends, but it wasn't healthy. They ended up having a couple kids. It didn't end well. Chrissy struggled with a lot of issues from her childhood, a lot of trauma. And so it was very hard on her. She felt very alone. She made some pretty poor decisions during her medical tenure. She was writing scripts for herself, having other people. She was writing scripts to other people for them to fill for her, for Adderall and stuff like that. She had a lot of addictions, but mostly she was really depressed. It was something that I truly never understood. I had never, all the trauma that I went through, I never experienced depression because even through everything, I always told myself like, girl, you're either going to like get through it or you're not. So you can choose. This is your destiny. Do you want to wallow in your own misery or do you want to get out and go do stuff? And so it was very hard concept for me to see her like just get swallowed. She wouldn't get out of bed. She stopped being the doctor that everybody loved. She was the one that like, the craziest calls. She would help all the Amish people. And she just loved serving other people. So my parents, that's weird saying that. They got divorced and I cannot believe I just said that. It's really weird to say that, but they got divorced. And it's funny because I always refer to them as my mom and dad, but I've never called them mom and dad. Even though like even Chrissy, when she would call or write letters, it was always love mom. Mm-hmm. Even Chad, like when I had, my child, such a proud dad. So it was funny because we would always refer to each other as daughter, dad, mom, mm-hmm. but I never actually called them mom and dad. But I did refer to them as my parents because they were. So, after they got divorced, Chrissy was extremely depressed, made really poor decisions. She ended up going to jail for the prescription fraud. She lost her medical license. She lost everything, honestly. So she was there for a year. And honestly, during that year, like, I hate myself for this, but like I was going through my own, like growing up, and I was so mad that she made that decision. Like, she had already struggled and she had already been caught another time, and like she got a slap on the wrist like, hey, don't do it again. Like, you have no idea how severe the consequences are going to be. Like, you'd think you'd learn, mm-hmm. but she didn't. And that's what addiction is. So she didn't learn. She messed up again. She ended up in jail. Well, even after she got out of jail, she was given the opportunity to, like earn custody for her kids, not full custody, but partial custody. And she just kept making mistakes, bad choices. And Chad and I ended up getting really close during that time because we both had heartache from this. We were both like, man, I just wish like she would choose differently. And then he was going through his own thing because my mom actually Chrissy ended up cheating on him. And so it was like a thing, and, that added to the divorce. And he's like, man, I just want somebody for me. So he would come to me like a lot with his problems. And we ended up just kind of like, we could go to each other with our problems. We told each other everything. That was the closest we ever got, like during that divorce time. Like, he dated here and there. He ended up finding a new girlfriend, Amy. And things were good. Like, he really liked her. She had been in a few relationships. I should have known it was a red flag, but she had already been married 2 or 3 times. This was her 3rd or 4th husband. Anyways, she got together with Chad, and he he knew that I'm not afraid to like ask questions or like bold. He's like, hey, I'm just wondering a couple of these things. He had me ask her like some interview questions, basically like, so tell me about yourself. The first time I met her, and she was like, I felt like it was an interrogation and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I was nice about it. Like, she did not like that. She immediately hated me. Well, she hated any part that was left over from his previous marriage. When I say vile, just a disgusting person, inside and out, just a disgusting person. She put so much of a wedge between me and Chad. She could not handle that he had an older daughter. She could not handle that we were close. She could not handle that I still got along and agreed with Chrissy, my mom. There was just so much that she, like, everything about me, she hated. So much to the point where she had her own daughter who was a couple years, a little bit younger than me. And we were taking Christmas photos one year, and she wanted me and JD, my husband, and my son to be out of it. Just her kids and Chad and Chrissy's two kids. But not me, because I was adopted into it. And I remember being very, very angry. Like, I know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And she ended up, the daughter came to me, the older daughter, and she was like, oh, don't worry. My mom doesn't even let me have pictures. Like, before I got married, she wouldn't even let, even though we were engaged, she wouldn't let my fiance be in the photo. I'm like, I'm not marrying, and I am the family. I was here before all y'all. Like, I was the first. Like, are you kidding me? But anyway, so it just went downhill from there. She drove such a wedge. Basically, she made it where he had to choose between her or me, which I thought was disgusting. Like, why would you do that? Like, ew. So every summer we used to go to Epworth. Our family has a lake cottage, and I wasn't allowed to stay in the house that everybody else in my family stayed with. I stayed with grandparents, which was fine. Good. There's no drama. Didn't matter. We did family photos again, and guess who was left out? And it was very hurtful. And then finally, Chad called me up that night to the main cottage, and he was just like, yeah, I don't know why you tell people that you're my daughter. You've never been my daughter. He did this in front of everyone, my whole family, grandparents, kids. And I was like, what? Like, I literally can prove, open your phone. What does it say? And he disowned me in front of his entire family and was like, yeah, no, you're just that girl that we were trying to help. And like, you always stuck around, and like, I couldn't get rid of you, basically. And that one hurt the worst. Out of every single parent, that one hurt the worst. To make it worse, before that happened, right before that, earlier in the year, Chrissy took her life. She couldn't handle the depression. And she's gone. And that messed me up, because it's like God finally brought somebody into my life that chose to stay forever. And then she killed herself. And it's like, I never did feel like, oh, I wasn't enough. I knew it was just so much more. Too much. And I never understood what suicide was until then. I had never understood how severe depression could be. But then when Chad thought, I'm going to disown my child in front of everybody, like after he himself was the one who made it so public, like, I remember the first time I met my grandparents or went to the summer cottage, and like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, like awkward. It was like, oh no, this is my daughter. We just, she's part of our family now. Like, there's no question asked. Grandparents, aunts and uncles, no one was like, oh, this is weird. Are you sure, Chad? No, it was like everybody was so welcoming, and it was like, I've been there my whole life. So when he decided to disown me, like, it had been over 10 years that he had been my dad. And I remember earlier that day, we were at like the local carnival, and I was telling someone, who was like, I remember saying, I made a comment. I was talking, maybe it was to John David. I was like, yeah, my dad was doing this. I was telling a story, but he was walking in front of me with Amy, and he heard me say my dad, and he turned around and he's like, and I didn't get it. Obviously I got it that night when he was like, yeah, you were never my child. Okay. That is the first time I experienced depression. I had never understood what it was like to choose your relationships, because my whole childhood, people were in my life without me choosing them. They just were there. And so I chose Chad back. Yes, he asked me to be part of his family, Chad and Chrissy, but I chose them back. I mean, I didn't really know them. I was taking a risk too, like I could be rejected again. Like, I never saw it coming. I would have bet my life that he would have never rejected me. And I had finally started opening up to the fact that no, like, these people love me. I'm never going to go anywhere, because there was always that slight doubt. And I remember like Chad would always tell me, you always think the worst. You always think that it's going to happen, that the ball's going to drop, and it's not. He would remind me all the time. And just constant affirmation, like, no, we're here. We love you. And so when that happened, he should have just killed me. Like, even now I think about it, I'm like, he should have just killed me, because I had never experienced depression before. Like, that was a whole new level of loss for me, because I never saw it coming. And I had gotten to the point where I believed him. And not only that, I had gotten to the point where I had opened up to him and Chrissy. Like, I trusted them. I trusted them. And yeah, that was the only time in my life where I thought, I am going to go kill myself now. I'm just going to get it over with. I had let somebody affect my life so much that I was willing to kill myself. And I think about that now, and I'm like, that's crazy that we as a human can let somebody affect our emotions so strongly that we're willing to do that. And I knew I was screwed, because I just went deeper and deeper. It got so bad. About a month after he disowned me, he called me and apologized. He said, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm so sorry. I have to be careful. I'm teetering a fence right now with Amy. They weren't married yet. Or maybe they were. I don't know. But anyways, he's like, yeah. I'm like, the point is, you shouldn't have to choose. Like, I'm not putting you in a position where I'm making you choose. I'm not doing anything different. I'm the same person I've always been. She's the difference. If she's that type of person that's going to make you choose between your own daughter, then that tells you what kind of person she is. She's a witch. Like, okay, you do you. But if you're happy, you do that. But I'm not going to stick around. Like, I was just so hurt. Well, it's funny, because I had, the day before he called me and apologized, which I had been waiting for. I had been waiting, like, I know he's going to apologize. I know he's going to beg me to come back, and it's going to be fine. We're going to we'll work through this, and we'll heal. I wrote a letter to Amy, and I wrote one to Chad. My husband also wrote one to Amy and Chad. And let me tell you, his were exactly what I wanted to say, but couldn't say. Mm-hmm. Mine were like groveling, like, what do I have to do to be in your good graces? But so he apologized on the phone the next day, and I was like, well, I got to tell you something. I sent these letters, if you want to just burn them, do that. No, they didn't. They read them. Mm-hmm. So dug my grave with that one. But yeah, that was the biggest loss I've ever experienced was Chad, which is funny because you'd think it'd be Chrissy. But she never rejected me. She loved me to the end, unconditionally to the end. But yeah, Chad was the biggest heartbreak of my life. We don't talk. I tried a few times to mend things and he wasn't willing to do it. He was so annoying because you could tell like Amy would be hovering over like the phone call or like, you know, I got to ask my wife like, oh, it's a terrible relationship if you're in that type of relationship. But yeah, that one broke me. But on top of Chad disowning me, losing my mom, this is all within months of each other. I lost my dog, who I had since I think I like graduated high school, whatever. He was like my companion. He was like my best friend. On top of that, I had been married to my current husband, and we had been married, I don't know, 10 years, maybe 11 or 12 at the time. And I found out he cheated on me. And it was like all of this at one time. So obviously my depression was like, I'm sure that also added to it. I could not believe that my husband cheated on me because, I mean, we just have been best friends for years. But maybe that was the issue. We had been more best friends. And we've talked about it since, like, when we got married, it was more like we're getting married and like that's just how it's happening because we've known each other for so long. And like, I don't know why I'm marrying you, but I'm going to because like our background tells us like you go to school, you get married, you have kids, and like you have a traditional life, and that's just how it goes. And since you've known each other, oh, and you've also made out and like had sex, so you need to get married. So we did. We got married. And we were not in love. We loved each other. We had love for each other, but we were not in love. So it was a very rocky, miserable couple first years. Like, I hate this person. Like, it was horrific. But I stuck it out because obviously you can't get divorced. So during this time, we're both young. We got married right when we turned 21. Very, very young, still learning who we even are. We're both going through so much. Like, he's in the army. I'm dealing with a horrible past, like trying to figure out like, how do I just shove that aside to like move on with my life and become an adult? So just going through a lot. Anyways, so 12 years in, I have a 5-year-old son. And I find out he says he's going to a conference for work. I should have known that. And like, come on. No. He had been talking to somebody that we had worked with before, and he slept with her. I could not believe that because I am the first person he ever slept with. I'm his one and only, and that sucked. I remember just being so angry and hurt, obviously, but it was crazy how I immediately went into it like, yeah, you suck. What you did was horrible and horrific and like you should die. But also, how did I play a role in that? I know a lot of people like can't do that, but a marriage does take two people, and not giving any excuse to what he did. But he didn't just say, I'm going to go cheat. Most people don't. Most people, there's like a buildup of like, either, not being reciprocated or respect. There's so many underlying issues in a relationship. And I already had so many issues building relationships. I had never had a successful relationship in my life except for a couple girlfriends. So that was also new to me. Marriage, like you're committing your life. And so immediately, instead of just playing the blame game and being like, you suck, you're a terrible person, you did this, you're disgusting, I was like, well, what have I done? Like, what, not necessarily what I have done, but like, what could I have done differently? Like, how did I add not only to the cheating, but like to the failing of our relationship in general. Because let's be real, it wasn't great. It was horrible during that time. So it was that. People aren't going to believe me, but that was the best thing that ever happened to my life, is him cheating on me. It was like our eyes were opened immediately. Like, what do you want in your life? You're an adult. You get to choose. No one's telling you what you have to do. You can choose what you want from here on out. And I remember being like, I could walk away from this. But then I thought back to all my rejection as a child and like, no, I want to be committed. I want to be the person that commits. So we literally for like a week, I don't think we slept. We just talked about everything under the sun, our likes, dislikes, what irked us, what we felt our version of respect was, what we felt. Anyways, just total deep dive into who we were as a person and our mentality. And I wanted to save our marriage. And he didn't at first, because he was still in the, I got this new girl and she's perfect in every way and the grass is always greener. Hello. It took a while for him to realize, I've got something great here. And yeah, once he was on board too, yeah, he's the best. I mean, I love him so much. So we healed from that, and yeah, I have a 10-year-old now. My life's great. Like, I've never been so happy with my life than I am in the position I am right now, which is crazy considering I don't have any family. That's the only hard part. I have my brothers from the children's home, and I have my sister, but
you have your own family now that you created.
We created our own. So, yeah, all that to say, like, yes, I had a ton of trauma in my life, and I have horrific PTSD. But it's funny because, a lot of people say post-traumatic disorder, but like, I don't think of it as that. I think of it as like, it's a post-traumatic decision. And I'm going to decide that I'm not going to let that affect me. I'm going to decide that I'm going to use this to better myself. I learned from that experience. I learned from those heartaches. I have built an amazing relationship with my husband and child. Like, it's literally, I can't even believe that my life is my life. It's everything I dreamed of as a kid. And I have amazing in-laws. That's awesome too. His parents they're my mom and dad. I call them mom and dad, actually. So I am really grateful for the life that God has given me. I never knew how God was going to use my life. And, that's why I reached out to you to begin with, because as a child, I'm not going to lie, it was really annoying. Yeah. Everybody would be like, don't worry, little girl. God's going to use your life in some way. God's going to use your story. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm like 40, so God, let's do this.
Well, I think too, like, not only for yourself, because I think it probably took you some time and healing to get to a point of realizing that it was never you or your fault, and you have never not been enough. Like, you're always enough. And I think that your story, whether it's other kids or adults now that, even if they did go through the foster care system or had multiple different families or parents or rejections throughout, everyone should know that it was never their fault.
Yeah.
Like, because even if you did something.
Yes. You're still a child.
Yeah, you're still a child. Like, and everyone deserves to feel unloved, especially as a child, is so heartbreaking, and no child deserves that. And I think your story is so important to prove that and show that. And to know that no matter what, you're always enough. And even if you're not enough for someone else, you're enough for yourself. And that says nothing about you, but about them.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, if you're going to make a decision to take a child in or to adopt a child, that's a huge commitment. You can't just, or you shouldn't just give them up when things get hard. That's not the point of it.
I will say on a last note about that. So my husband and I did go through the foster care system to become parents to adopt we wanted the kids that nobody else wanted. And we did get placed with four kids, a family of 4. We were ecstatic. These kids went through really hard trauma. And All I can say is that the system did not work, and they were taken back, and that was very devastating for us because we were ready to move forward and like make that huge commitment. They were teenagers, and that was really hard for us. We did that 2 years ago now.
Okay.
And then last year, actually, like right around this time, we got placed with 2 kids. And I say I can relate in a way now because these 2 kids, wow, it was very difficult. There was a lot of aspects to it where that was the only time in my life where I understood how some people, that's why I said like with Janet and Bob Reed, like, okay, you know, maybe I did not do anything like these kids did. And like you said, they weren't bad, even though my son would be like, oh, what they did was bad. It was a bad decision, some of the things that they did, but like not bad enough where I'm like, well, I'm not going to love you anymore. Or, but I understood because there was no connection with these kids.
And I think too, something can be where it's just not a good fit.
Yes.
And I do understand that. But I think that like your circumstances, it just seemed like it was just so like, never mind.
Yeah, because
You know what I
because
mean?
a lot of these people already knew who I was. The only people that I said like really have a reason is Bob and Janet. They went into it blind, where they're like, we're just going to try this out. Hopefully it works. But yeah, everybody else, they had already built that relationship and then chose to take me out of a situation to make it better, only to make it a million times worse. Like, you know, our time here is so short, and it's just like, man, the story with Joel and Kristen, like the abuse and trauma that I had from them is so much bigger. And all this to say, you think he ever suffered any consequences? No, he didn't. I did actually report it to the state police. He was investigated, but it was a he said, she said, and so. But yeah, I am really good. I'm in a very healthy spot in my life. I have the best support system with friends and family, and so
I think that's amazing. And like I said before, I feel like the beauty of it is not only are you able to share it now and turn it into something where you can reach other people and help people not feel alone, because you never know who's listening.
I know.
And if somebody feels like you did at certain points, like, you know, I'm done. Like this could be the saving grace for that person of like, well, let me just keep going. Because even if I feel like all the circumstances that you went through of like with these different families, that really was out of your control, especially being so young. It's like you didn't have much say or control. But now it's like you're an adult and you're able to build your own family. And like I said, kind of give your family now and your son the things that you couldn't have or didn't have. And almost make sure that that doesn't repeat. You know, and sometimes like for different people's circumstances, that's part of their life, and it's sad and it sucks. And I'm sure there's people that have great experiences with adoption and things like that. But I think I always say it's so important to talk about the other side of those things, because there's always people that can relate to that too. And to see you now and hear where you are now, I think that's so incredible. And it's such a statement about who you are and your strength, because like I said, the amount of instability you had and kind of having to adapt to so many different environments and personalities and traumas. It's like, it's not easy to do, and then come to a place, even if it did take years and years, to get to a place where you're able to be where you are now and speak about it and go through it. Even though you said some of it might be like bits and pieces, you remember a lot, you know, like to be able to go through all of those different years and families, that's a lot. And I feel like it's amazing to not let those parts of your life to define you, but to still have it as something to reflect on and be able to share now as like a story of, okay, well, this was my childhood, but this is where I am now. And you did an amazing job of telling it. It really felt like, it kind of reminded me of like different chapters of a book. Like each year of your life was like a different chapter and a different, like really we got to see into all these different people's families and lives in your life. And I think that's, You did a really, really good job of telling it.
Thanks.
It really felt like a book. It did. Like, I feel like you should write a book. If you
Everybody
like,
said that.
no, but you should, because I think that,
does.
like,
Yeah.
that's what it reminded me of. Like,
Yeah.
right towards the end of it, I was like, I can see this being a book, because it's something where you want to hear about how everybody did something so different, but almost how the result ended up the same.
Yeah.
And how it could have gone very differently for you. You know, and
that's the crazy thing is, I do look back and I think, like, well, and that's one thing, like the stereotype of where I grew up. Like, I remember being told so many times, oh, you know, you have to be careful because you're going to end up an alcoholic, a druggie, and pregnant at 18. And I think I was told that enough that I didn't. I was like, no.
Right. But it could have had different outcomes.
Yes.
And for a lot of people, it does.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm saying. It's like, you don't know who's listening, or even if somebody knows someone, you know, and it's just to give that different perspective of what someone's going through, because not everybody wears their heart on their sleeves or expresses themselves. So just to have that different perspective and understanding of, you know, how different people grow up, because you really, when people say, like, you really don't know what someone's been through, like, you have no idea, because
everybody has something.
Yeah,
every single person
meeting
has
you and talking to you, they wouldn't know all the different things you've went through,
and they don't. That's the crazy thing is that like, you're the first person that I have shared, like, besides my husband, that knows this is my life. Like, people just don't know, because like I said, it doesn't define me. Yes, it helped me grow, but I did not let that deter me. I did not let that become my story. I let that be part of it. And I chose my own destiny. Like, I know that I could use my life as a crutch. I could say, yeah, I did all this. I did all these horrible things. I was part of this. And, like, you know, that's why I'm going to be depressed the rest of my life, or I'm going to let this trauma really affect. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm choosing my destiny.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going in life. My life's going to be great. And screw that.
Yeah,
no.
and look at you now.
Yeah.
You're right. You know, and to be, like I always say, to be able to talk about your life from start to finish and where you are now, that's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of strength, a lot of vulnerability, and you did it, and you did such a good job. Seriously, I can't say it enough. Like, you... Like, I feel like I was, like, invested the whole time. I'm just like, wait, who's next? What's happening next? But no, seriously. And I can't thank you enough. And it means so much to me that you chose this platform to tell that story for the first time. And the fact that you haven't shared this to many people at all, if, like you said, besides your husband, that's incredible. And I'm very grateful that you wanted to come on here and do that. And you really should be proud of yourself.